After turning himself into a demon and wielding its power, he was ultimately defeated by the hero. The hero stood over him, remarking on the pity of being swallowed by darkness and questioning why he chose to become a demon in the first place. Lying amidst the rubble, the defeated man smirked, cursing the commoner hero. He declared that if his own death was the price to defeat the hero, it was a small one to pay. His physical form dissolved into a black mist, but his soul endured. He recalled a time before becoming a demon, when he was just himself, unable to move his companions from their path. He lamented that his soul, like those of the Takachi clan, was tough as hell and would continue to be fed to the demons. For an immeasurable time, his soul was consumed. Years, perhaps even decades, passed. No matter how many times he wished for it to end, the torment never stopped. At last, only a single fragment remained. He recognized this as the last piece of his soul, a sense of finality washing over him. And then a new awareness dawned. An eye fluttered open as he realized that now, finally, something was happening. His sense of self began to coalesce into a single, coherent thought. I am. And with a sharp gasp, he awoke, shooting upright in bed with wide, shocked eyes. His gaze swept over his surroundings. Everything was shining and bright, stirring a deep and inexplicable sense of nostalgia. He felt his hands move, touching them together in disbelief. He had a body, one made of flesh. A voice escaped his lips, hoarse and new. He could speak. He could move. The sunlight felt good against his skin, streaming in through a window under a clear sky. For a moment, he wondered if this was heaven. But then, seeing his reflection, he recoiled. It couldn't be. He remembered being trapped by demons, and then becoming one himself. This realization was confusing. His soul should have been completely destroyed. As he pondered his situation, a strange, translucent board materialized before him. It read, "Congratulations, you have become a seeker. Would you like to open the menu?" He quietly spoke the words aloud. Open menu. He considered that it could be a demon's trap. He had never seen magic that could make letters float in midair like this before. Swallowing hard, he acknowledged that despite the risk, it was the only lead he had to understand his circumstances. He reached out to press the option. With a touch, the interface expanded, displaying a menu with several options: status, skills, quests, and message box. He wondered if status was some kind of rank or social class. Selecting it revealed his new identity: Salim Bergman, a 14-year-old male, a seeker at level -51, and the eldest son of the Duke's house. The information was jarring. 14 years old? He remembered becoming a demon when he was 17, after the hero defeated him. He was certain more than a decade had passed before his soul finally vanished. He examined his new form more closely, touching his silver blonde hair. He recalled his mother praising its color when he was a child, but by the time he turned 17 and became a demon, it had grown rough and dull. The situation made no sense. Setting aside his confusion for a moment, he decided to check the other tabs. He selected skills, but the panel simply read no skills. He stared in disbelief, completely baffled by what a seeker level was even supposed to signify. His shock deepened. No skills? He had possessed a decent talent in magic, even if he couldn't beat his rivals. He opened the message box and found a welcome message explaining what a seeker was: one who trains in pursuit of the righteous path, raising their level through good deeds and virtue. He sighed. So, he was supposed to train his heart to resist demonic temptations all over again. A main quest had started. To resist the temptations of demons, he must reach Seeker level 30. He remembered his status showed his level was -51. The number struck him with horror. If he was in the past, then he was doomed to fall to temptation and become a demon again at 17. The path ahead was ridiculous. He had to raise his so-called Seeker level by 81 levels. The weight of his situation brought back memories of why he'd fallen in the first place. All he had ever wanted was to make them pay. He had known that taking on the power of a fiend was the only way to finally beat them. The hero who humiliated him, the haughty little princess, and the arrogant girl who dared talk back. With that power, he thought he would never lose to anyone again. He knelt, tormented by the whispers of his past. The disappointment in his father's eyes, the disdain from the retainers, it all fed into a creeping darkness. This, he realized, was a demon's temptation, born from the faintest crack in his heart. He saw himself as everyone else did, pitiful, worthless, no match for the princess or the heir of a noble house. This feeling of powerlessness triggered a vivid memory of his demonic form. He recalled Kadia's warning that once the demonic influence takes hold, it steals and twists all human reasoning and emotion. As she lunged, shouting his name and unleashing an ice bullet, his past self stood defenseless, while his present self could only watch, acutely aware of his own lack of power. The attack had left her wounded, but his demonic self was merely impressed by her regeneration. He sneered at the sight of the princess, once hailed as the pride of the first king in battle, now groveling before him. With cold resolve, he declared that he would simply have to take her head. His gloating was cut short by the arrival of the commoner hero. His demonic self recoiled, expressing his deep despise for the light the hero embodied. He remembered this moment clearly. This was the fate of those who succumbed to temptation, to be struck down by the hero. His soul fed to the demon again and again in a repeating cycle. He now understood that his immense magical power was the very reason for his fall, and the kingdom's subsequent ruin. The system's directive was clear. To resist demonic temptation, he must reach Seeker level 80. A sliver of hope emerged. If he could raise his level, perhaps he could forge a different path from the one engraved in his memory. But the desire that led him down that path had been simple. He had wanted power. He never wished to lose himself, let alone bring about the kingdom's ruin. With a newfound resolve hardening his expression, he turned his attention to the task at hand. He considered how to level up and strengthen his heart, his gaze falling upon the system's interface. He saw options for a main quest and a daily quest, and his finger moved to select the latter. A notification appeared, outlining his first daily quest. To gain experience points and increase his level, he needed to complete 2 actions every day, prayer and 1 good deed. He sighed and clasped his hands together to attempt the prayer, but felt nothing happen. He realized he had never truly prayed with sincere intent before. Focusing his mind, he tried again. A chime confirmed the completion of the prayer quest. He noted the experience points, but saw his level remained unchanged. Now, he was left to ponder the vague task of performing a good deed, deciding that a donation to the church might be a good place to start. He travels by carriage, observing the passing scenery. The season of autumn leaves is beautiful. The view moves him in a way that feels more suited to an old man than a boy of 14. He can't help it, though, as his memories contain a much longer life. He savors the simple, pleasant sensations of the moment, the beautiful scenery, the gentle breeze, even the swaying of the carriage. It is a stark contrast to the decade his soul was devoured by a demon, a time that felt like an eternity. He still struggles to accept this reality, wondering if it is some cruel illusion crafted by a demon, or perhaps a final, fading flashback of his soul. Yet, the visions are so vivid that it is hard to believe it is merely a dream. His introspection is interrupted as he turns his attention to Nadia, his guard and swordsmanship tutor. He notes that the long-lived elf hasn't changed at all. Sensing something is amiss, he asks if she is troubled. She is startled by his question, quickly denying that anything is wrong and turning the concern back on him. She asks if he feels unwell. He internally recalls that in his memories, Nadia left the ducal house, disgusted by his rotten nature. If even she gave up on him, he reasons, resisting a demon was impossible. He apologizes for making her worry. He reassures her that he is perfectly fine, but understands her worry is because she doesn't trust him after his recent outburst. Recalling the system's advice to avoid weird deeds, he concludes that he must be more careful in how he speaks to people. He then asks Nadia about the board he sees, but she is utterly confused. Realizing she cannot perceive it, he quiets her and tells her to look closely at his finger, hoping to demonstrate. As he focuses, the interface appears in his vision. He notes that the strange board usually stays out of sight, only showing up when he concentrates. Deciding it needs a proper name, he dubs it the Seeker system. Having found a way to perform a good deed, Salim visits a church. A portly clergyman joyfully accepts a gold coin, thanking the young heir of Duke Bergman for his generous donation. Salim felt a quiet satisfaction, a small smile playing on his lips. The amount he had given was enough to support a commoner for a whole month. Surely, it would count as a good deed. He even mused that he could repeat this simple act daily to complete his quest. But his satisfaction was shattered by a notification from the Seeker system. It declared that he had wasted the people's hard-earned tax money. Not only did he gain nothing, but 500 experience points were deducted, causing his level to drop to negative 52. He staggered back in disbelief, crying out that his experience had dropped. Nadia, alarmed by sudden distress, rushed to his side, asking what was wrong. Ignoring her, Salim's mind raced. His EXP could decrease. The system judged the donation as a waste, which could only mean one thing. This country's church was corrupt. His shock hardened into a cold fury. He remembered his past life, how the church, with all its high and mighty sermons, had been the first to fall to temptation when darkness consumed the capital. Their failure to act was one of the primary reasons the kingdom had collapsed. To lose experience for donating to such a worthless organization filled him with rage. A system notification declares that Salim has lost control of his emotions, resulting in a deduction of 50 experience points. His level remains at minus 52. He grits his teeth, struggling to calm himself, shocked that the system is so strict as to penalize him merely for his thoughts. To clear his head, he turns to Nadia, announcing they are done for the moment and suggests a walk around town. He feels he needs a breather before he completely loses his composure. As they walk, his attention is suddenly captured by a sweet aroma wafting through the air. He pauses, wondering aloud if it is the smell of chocolate. The scent leads his gaze to a nearby shop, its window displaying rows upon rows of what appear to be delicious chocolates. He sighs, feeling worn out by the system's demands and his body's sudden craving for sweets. Worried that indulging might cost him more experience points, he ultimately decides to deal with the consequences later and boldly asks for one of everything. He then presents a box of the confections to Nadia as a thank you for accompanying him, acknowledging that she is always looking out for him. Blushing, Nadia accepts the gift, remarking that the shop has become quite popular and that the young master has excellent taste. She beams with pure joy, thanking him profusely. At that moment, a system notification appears. He has gained 10 EXP for making Nadia happy. Furthermore, his daily quest, one good deed a day, is now complete, rewarding him with 500 EXP and a level up to -51. Salim looks on, utterly bewildered by this outcome. His mind struggles to process the system's logic. He concludes that its strange unfairness feels less like a demon's trick and more like a divine decree. After everything he ruined in his past life, he cannot fathom what could possibly be expected of him now. The next morning, looking at his reflection, he finds a new resolve. He decides that despite having just awakened at 14, he will start completing the daily quests. As his maid, Mari, enters to wake him, he greets her and immediately begins to ponder what good deed he should perform for the day, deciding it matters little whether this system is from a god or a demon. He looks at Mari, the maid who has cared for him since he was a child, and realizes for the first time just how young she must have been back then. For now, he concludes he will simply follow the system and focus on leveling up. He begins his day by presenting a box of chocolates to his maid, Mari. She gasps, flustered by the unexpected gift from her young master, stammering her thanks. As she accepts, he quietly wonders what has gotten into him to prompt such a sudden act of kindness. The gesture, however, yields no reaction from the system. He puzzles over this, recalling that giving something to Nadia increased his experience, while his donation to the corrupt church resulted in a penalty. He theorizes that a good deed is only recognized if the gift is something the recipient genuinely wants or needs. With this new understanding, he decides on a course of action. He instructs Mari to arrange a visit to the city orphanage for that afternoon, after he has finished his studies and training. She acknowledges his command. Later, upon arriving at the orphanage, he observes the children playing happily outside. He concludes that the institution is well run, making it a worthy recipient for a true good deed. He approaches the man in charge and offers a donation, telling him to use it to buy the children something good to eat. The man gratefully accepts. The system responds immediately. He gains 100 experience points for the donation and another 500 for completing his one good deed a day quest, which also fulfilled a prayer requirement. He clenches his fist in triumph, realizing that as long as his actions genuinely help, they count. Buoyed by his success, he now has a solid plan for his daily quests. He smiles confidently at the manager, promising to continue supporting the orphanage so the children can live happily and asking to be informed if they need anything. The man is overcome with gratitude. The manager mentions that some children are cold due to a lack of winter blankets. Salim immediately agrees to help, promising to have them ready by the next day. He internally notes that supporting the domain's various welfare facilities will be a smooth way to clear his daily quests. His simple plan, however, was easier in thought than execution. His day is quickly filled with the duties of a young lord. Mari announces the arrival of his swordsmanship tutor, and he is soon swamped with documents to review and other responsibilities. The weight of his obligations, studying, training, and managing the house, leaves him feeling utterly overworked. He remembers his promise to deliver the blankets today and the children who were cold. Deciding a late visit from him would be a burden, he resolves to send a servant with the delivery instead, assuming this will still complete his quest. Later, a servant returns, announcing that a messenger has brought a thank you letter from the orphanage. Salim is confused. Despite the blankets having been delivered, he received no quest completion notification. He realizes the truth. A good deed doesn't count if he just orders someone else to do it. He decides to test the system's boundaries from another angle, calling for his maid, Mari. With a calm expression, he gives her a strange order to break a tree branch. Mari is taken aback, but hesitantly agrees to follow his command. The moment the deed is done, a system notification appears, deducting 10 experience points for intentionally harming a plant. He grimaces, realizing that the system accounts for misdeeds done through others. As he contemplates the existence of a potential loophole, the system penalizes him again, this time deducting 100 points merely for considering cheating, leaving him utterly stunned. His experiment concluded, he dismisses Mari. She apologizes and lingers for a moment, remarking with a cheerful smile how wonderfully warm and cozy his room is. Her comment catches his attention. Mari explains that only he, the young master, could make a room so comfortable. She contrasts it with the servant's waiting room, which she describes as chilly, even though it also has a heating magic tool. She elaborates that the heater in his room is powerful because it runs on his vast supply of mana, whereas the one in the waiting room, powered by the servant's own mana, is far less effective. This revelation gives him pause. Mari admits she isn't particularly gifted with mana, and Salim realizes that in large noble houses, mana is prioritized for work-related tools, leaving little for comforts like heating. He had always taken the convenience of magic for granted, never considering the mana limitations of the staff. A new resolve forms, and he decides to inspect the break room's heater himself. He strides toward the servants' quarters. As he opens the door to their break room, a maid resting inside gasps in surprise at the young master's unexpected arrival. The maid asks why he is there, but he ignores her, his attention fixed on the small, faintly glowing heating device. He notes that it's barely providing any warmth at all. Extending his hands, he channels his own mana into it, stating that the temperature should now be much more comfortable. A wave of warmth instantly fills the room. The system alerts him that he has shown kindness, rewarding him with 100 EXP. Both his prayer and good deed a day quests are marked complete, adding another 500 XP and causing him to level up. Feeling efficient, he decides to warm the adjacent hallway as well, much to the maid's astonishment. He ponders the concept of kindness. For the first time, he realizes he must think about others. He reasons that if he continues to pour magic into the heating system daily, it will not only make the servants happy, but will also count as quest completion. The maid looks on, overjoyed by the simple comfort. His act of kindness brought a radiant smile to the maid's face. He watched her, resolving to himself that he would continue this every night, regardless of whether he gained experience points for it, though he doubted the system was that generous. His selfless thought was immediately rewarded. A system notification announced a gain of 300 experience points for having a selfless heart, bringing his total to 660. He was stunned, realizing he could both gain and lose points based on his thoughts alone. The system's ability to restrict his very mind was its most difficult aspect. As he processed this, the maid, Mari, broke through his shock, thanking him profusely for saving her. He turned to Mari, a troubled expression on his face, admitting to himself that he was aware he'd been acting like a different person all morning. He then posed a question to her. If she had to perform one good deed a day, what would she do? Her question sent him spiraling into his memories. He recalled his previous self at 14 years old, during the late autumn before he was to enter the academy in the royal capital. Stressed from studying for the entrance exams, he would frequently yell at the servants whenever something displeased him. Mari's voice pulled him from his thoughts. She found his desire to improve himself before heading to the capital admirable. He, however, was more concerned with the system, silently pleading with it not to subtract points for his past misdeeds, while acknowledging that yelling was wrong. She then offered her idea for a good deed, picking up trash around town. The thought had never occurred to Salim. Inspired, he declared he would try it too, startling Mari, who insisted that she meant for herself to do it, not the young master. He slumped, realizing the complexity of his task. Performing good deeds was already difficult, but now he had to consider social class. The idea of the heir to a ducal house picking up trash was unthinkable. He'd be kicked out of the family if anyone found out. This realization led him to a drastic thought. Perhaps running away from home would be better, allowing him to focus solely on leveling up. After all, his memories of the future were grim. The demon invasion would wipe out not just his family's ducal house, but the entire kingdom. He recalled the commoner hero who had defeated him, frustratingly strong, but even he could only rally people to resist. Against the ever-growing swarm of demons, what they could protect was far too limited, and the kingdom ultimately vanished from the map. The memory solidified his grim conclusion. If that was the inevitable future, perhaps his only path to survival was to live in hiding, staying wary of the demon's temptations to avoid becoming one himself. But even that path felt insufficient. He knew that just because he escaped the demon's grasp didn't mean the invasion would stop. He remembered the church's corruption spreading, and knew the demon's invasion would likely come in the future, just as he remembered it. He decides it's better to find a way to prevent the kingdom's fall rather than abandon his influential position. Turning to his maid, he asks Mari if she can think of a good deed he could do daily. He dismisses monster hunting, as even harming a plant results in a point deduction, and notes that he has already tried making a donation. Her mind goes blank under the pressure, and his intense gaze inadvertently frightens her. A system notification immediately appears, informing Salim that he has lost 50 experience points for scaring a woman. Shocked, he listens as Mari apologizes for not being helpful. He feels a pang of guilt, realizing how kind she has become that she would be so moved by his simple apology. Later, Salim consults an elderly teacher, explaining his quest for a good deed a day to foster mental growth before entering the academy. The teacher suggests creating magical tools for the impoverished who have low magic power. She explains that her subject, enchantment magic, involves crafting tools by inscribing them with special formulas, an idea that seems to shock another scholar in the room. She notes that since such tools aren't profitable, their development is often neglected, yet she believes it's a crucial area of research. She smiles warmly, asking for his thoughts, and adding that designing from the perspective of others would be excellent training. Salim, however, is overwhelmed by the prospect of inventing something new every single day. Seeing his hesitation, the teacher expresses a hint of disappointment. Despite his initial reluctance, he concedes that the idea is interesting as a study. He begins to ponder what he could create, but finds it difficult to imagine the needs of people with low magic power, admitting he has no connections to such individuals. His thoughts drift to a conversation with Mari, recalling that even among commoners, only those with a certain level of magic are hired as castle staff. He remembers her mentioning that in the servants' quarters, they rely on firewood for heat. An idea sparks, and he turns his attention to magical heating tools. In what seems like no time at all, Salim presents his teacher with a new magical formula. She is astounded, recognizing it as a repurposed and beautifully efficient design. She explains that if the magic circle is placed beneath a fireplace, it will absorb ambient mana, causing firewood to last up to twice as long without consuming any magical power. She marvels that he could create such a thing in a single lesson. The teacher praises his remarkable talent, musing on how much people's lives could improve if he specialized in enchantment magic. Salim, however, looks away, stating that nobles with immense magical power like him are expected to prioritize fighting magical beasts. It is their duty. His internal thoughts clarify his position. There is no way a duke's son would become a specialist in tool development. His purpose is to become strong enough to eliminate monsters and secure a safe existence for humanity. His worth is measured by his combat abilities, making enchantment magic nothing more than a hobby. Despite this internal conflict, he acknowledges the pain of how poorly he matches the Seeker system. Having secured his teacher's stamp of approval on the blueprint, he resolves to send it to a craftsman anyway. He is suddenly startled by a notification that materializes before him. A chime sounds as he receives 500 bonus experience points for his completed deed, causing him to level up instantly. His eyes widen in disbelief as he sees his experience jump all at once. His initial shock gives way to a quiet resolve. He acknowledges that the road ahead will be difficult, but he is determined to persevere. By following the guidance of the Seeker system, completing its quests, and leveling up, he plans to overcome the temptations of demons and steer clear of the tragic future he remembers, forging a path toward a happy ending. Waking in his own bed, Salim Bergman feels a tear escape his eye. 6 days have passed. The reality that he has truly returned to the past is slowly, painfully, setting in. The memories of what came after are burned into his mind. He recalls how his body vanished, how his soul was endlessly devoured by demons, and how he was forced to watch as his kingdom fell into ruin over a decade. His spirit should have been shattered, yet somehow it endured. He sits up, contemplating the baffling situation. Now 14 years old again, with a Seeker level of 48, he suspects it is all related to a mysterious Seeker system. He doesn't understand its full nature, only that it seems to be a system that demands he strengthen his heart and resist the temptations of demons. Upon completing his daily prayer, he reflects on his only clue to avoiding the future he witnessed, this very system. To level up and strengthen his heart, he must perform one good deed a day. Through trial and error, he discovered that donations to the church were poorly received, and a gift to his maid was ineffective. However, a donation to the orphanage yielded a positive result, so he resolves to continue with that for now. And so, for several days, he continues his donations to the orphanage, placing another coin on the counter as his elven guard, Nadia, watches from nearby. He soon learns another rule of the system. Overdoing it isn't rewarded. Once the orphanage had sufficient funds, his gold donations stopped counting. However, when he instead donated hearth-use magical tools he had developed, the system registered it as a valid deed. He realizes he must provide what is truly needed, nothing more and nothing less. His thoughts are interrupted as Nadia approaches. She informs Salim that his practical training is set to begin today with a monster-slaying expedition, and that she will be accompanying him as both his supervisor and coachman. Standing in a wide courtyard, he reviews the details of the expedition. A group of other young nobles, his peers for this training, are assembled a short distance away. He considers that this might be an opportunity to find some villagers in trouble to help. The group of trainees approaches him with a unified step. One of them, a boy with spiky hair, calls out a cheerful morning greeting. Salim returns the pleasantry and encourages them all to train hard so they can pass next year's academy entrance exam together. The spiky-haired boy, Gilbert, asks if their targets are only goblins, hoping for a more serious fight. His companion, a more serious boy with glasses, sighs and clarifies the situation. He explains to Gilbert that the expedition is more than just monster hunting. It is a comprehensive training exercise for nobles of their age to successfully complete an expedition under supervision. He warns a fellow noblewoman, Valerie, not to take the upcoming entrance exam lightly, noting that the acceptance rate is expected to be extremely competitive. Another young man, Gilbert, interjects that regardless of her current attitude, they will all be classmates soon, adding that it is an honor to be in the same year as Salim. Valerie confirms she is aware, explaining that many nobles are adjusting their enrollment year to coincide with the princesses. Salim overhears their conversation and reflects that it is true. He is enrolling in the same year as the crown princess, whose combat prowess is said to rival that of the first king. He knows the academy has a flexible age requirement, which is why so many are adjusting their plans to be intergrade. Just as Valerie warned, the competition will be fierce, forcing them all to strive in both academics and martial arts. Valerie Meldars, despite her family's connections, is anxious about the martial arts exam, while Gilbert Benson, the son of a viscount, is more concerned about the written portion. As the cart rattles on, Salim considers his companions, remembering from his future self that Gilbert and Valerie are the most prominent candidates for his inner circle. Yet he also recalls his past failures. After entering the academy, he was outclassed in combat by a commoner who would become a hero and overshadowed in leadership by the daughter of a marquis. The memory stings. Though his retainers showed him respect on the surface, he could sense their exasperated sighs behind his back. Sensing their growing disdain, he began lashing out, creating a rift that eventually left him completely alone. Returning to the present as the cart continues its bumpy ride, Salim reaffirms his goal for this expedition: to build camaraderie with those who will one day fight beside him. To achieve this, he must follow the system's guidance and act intelligently. His thoughts are interrupted as he spots movement outside, muttering in annoyance. Kobolds again? As Gilbert begins to whine, the noble with glasses tells him to stop, explaining that it's not unusual for weak monsters to appear in areas with few people. He clarifies that while land saturated with mana becomes human territory when inhabited, that same mana gives rise to monsters in desolate places, highlighting the fierce struggle for territory. Gilbert complains that the captain made him do the same thing last time while just standing by. Spotting 3 kobolds, he is told by his companion to handle them. Gilbert retorts that while kobolds are barely a warm-up for Salim, it's better for everyone to gain combat experience than for him to deal with them himself, urging the cart driver to move faster. As he watches Gilbert charge into battle, Salim analyzes the system's logic. He recalls once receiving a point deduction for an unnecessary order to break plant branches. However, when he orders someone else to defeat monsters, the system doesn't react. He reasons that because Gilbert has no reservations about fighting, it doesn't negatively affect his own experience gain. His eyes narrow in concentration. Though he doesn't fully understand how the system makes its evaluations, he has a hunch that taking a life himself might be considered a demerit. Based on this, he resolves to avoid direct combat as much as possible to minimize any potential losses. He listens as his companion, Gilbert, complains that even fighting weak creatures like kobolds is a pain. In response, the bespectacled noble proposes that for the next encounter, the 6 of them, everyone except Salim and Gilbert, will handle it. Salim looks on, startled, questioning if all of them are truly meant to fight. His concern is quickly followed by action as the group confronts 4 goblins. The bespectacled noble notes they are tougher than kobolds, but still manageable. Observing their youth and relative inexperience, Salim decides to provide aid, casting a support spell that envelopes his companions in a shimmering magical aura. Much to their amazement, empowered by his magic, the young nobles charge forward, clashing fiercely with a large, beast-like hobgoblin leading the monsters. After the battle, Gilbert approaches him, grinning. He praises Salim for his kindness, contrasting it with his own lack of support. Salim, meanwhile, confirms his theory internally. Using support magic to help others defeat monsters does not trigger any negative reaction from the system. With this confirmation, he contemplates his next move. Surrounded by his peers, he concludes that he must now test what happens if he engages in combat directly. The party soon arrives at a village, where they are greeted by an elderly woman. She introduces herself as the village chief, expressing how honored she is that the young lord has come himself. Salim politely accepts her welcome, stating that he will be in her care. The chief proceeds to brief him on the local threat. Goblin sightings have escalated with the discovery of a settlement led by a hobgoblin, which includes multiple magic users. The danger became too great, forcing them to request reinforcements. Salim inquires about the armored man beside her, and she confirms he is the village's only knight. She explains that requesting aid was the right decision, a process made much easier thanks to their lord. Hearing his father praised, Salim feels a swell of pride, pleased to see that the ducal territory is being properly administered. Later, Gilbert enthusiastically offers him sweets as thanks for handling the formal greetings, playfully warning him not to spoil his appetite. While munching on one, Salim consults his system interface, thinking about his daily quest and wondering what will be served for dinner. His attention then turns to a heavily used magical stove in the kitchen. He observes that its enchantment plates are smudged and the runes have faded. As the village chief and another woman watch, he quickly identifies the problem and, with a few adjustments, declares the appliance fixed and working again. He feels a surge of confirmation as the system announces the completion of his daily quests. 1 good deed a day and prayer. For repairing the villager's magical tool, he gains experience and 500 quest reward points, leveling up to 46. The grateful villagers express their awe, wondering why a young lord would so eagerly offer to perform such a repair. He smiles warmly, deflecting their gratitude by explaining his recent fascination with enchantment magic. He notes that the stove's fading magic formula was a fine piece of craftsmanship, and that he was grateful for the chance to see it. The villagers are deeply moved by his words, promising to pour their souls into preparing that evening's dinner. With the magical tool repaired and his daily quests cleared, he reflects that asking the village chief for more tasks the previous night was indeed the right decision. His attention then turns to the village's perimeter. He observes that the monster defenses, basic earth and magic barriers, are damaged in several places. While the villagers could likely manage the repairs themselves over time, he decides to fix them himself, channeling magic into the fortifications. The system immediately rewards him with another 100 experience points. This act prompts a moment of introspection. He finds it hard to believe he once desperately searched for good deeds to perform back at the castle, now realizing that such deeds simply mean getting involved in the daily lives of others. As he finishes, the village chief approaches, surprised to find him up so early and to see that he has already fixed the defensive wall. She explains that she had planned to guide him herself. Salim replies that he simply wanted to complete the repairs before the monster hunt, viewing it as a noble's duty to protect his people. Her voice swells with emotion as she declares her pride in being one of the people under the rule of House Bergman, wishing him fortune on his hunt. Salim is taken aback by her dramatic display, but internally dismisses it. To him, the sentimentality doesn't matter, so long as his experience points are not negatively affected. Later, hidden in the forest with the other young nobles, he surveys the enemy encampment. He identifies the large hobgoblin as the boss, supported by 2 goblin mages and a force of about 30 goblins. Confident that the other hero candidates can handle the lesser threats, he issues his orders. He will take the boss, Gilbert will charge the most concentrated group of enemies, and the others will form a perimeter to prevent any from escaping. Without hesitation, he casts Body Boost and dashes straight toward the hobgoblin. A goblin mage perched on a cliff prepares a remote attack, but Salim dismisses the obvious tactic, instantly casting Freeze to immobilize it before dispatching it with an ice bullet. A system notification appears, informing him that killing a monster in combat has decreased his experience points by 100. The deduction is an unwelcome surprise. Gritting his teeth in frustration at the penalty, he pushes the thought aside and refocuses on his primary target. The boss hunt has begun. He finds his path blocked by a goblin mage's barrier spell. In response, he unleashes his own magic, declaring a payback as he forms an ice bullet. The system immediately notifies him of another 100-point deduction for killing a monster in combat, much to his annoyance. His spell finds its mark. Spotting another hobgoblin with its back exposed, he launches a second ice bullet. This time, the system announces a staggering 1,000-point penalty for the kill. He stares in disbelief at the notification. 1,000 points? He realizes that the in-combat status has vanished, meaning he must have just finished off the last of the fleeing monsters. The penalty, he deduces, was so much higher because that one was the boss. With the main threat gone, he turns to his comrades, praising their efforts. As some of the remaining goblins attempt to flee, he swiftly casts Freeze, encasing the ground in ice to halt their escape and leave them for the others to handle. His decisive action rallies the other nobles. Gilbert Benson shouts for the group to press the attack, reminding them that Salim has left prey for them. Nearby, Nadia remarks to another noble that while Salim's spell-casting speed is a remarkable talent, he should make more use of the swordsmanship she taught him. Salim overhears her comment. He reflects on her words, knowing he consciously chose to use his sword this time. He thinks to himself that his magic is now so powerful he could freeze the entire horde in an instant, surpassing even the hero from his memories. However, the massive experience point deduction makes such a direct approach impossible. His contemplation is interrupted by Nadia, who asks if he is deliberately holding back to train his subordinates. He agrees that it's something like that. Internally, he reframes the situation. By training them, he can avoid killing monsters himself. He decides that from now on, he will let them do the fighting while he supports from the rear. Nadia, misinterpreting this as strategic foresight, is deeply impressed. Putting his new plan into action, he gestures toward the fray and calls out to his comrades, encouraging them to show him they can take down the remaining foes. The group responds with a unified, zealous cry, pledging to give their all in his support. After the battle concludes, Salim addresses them from a distance, commending their improved movements and expressing his hope that they will continue to support him in the royal capital next year. He watches their reactions, stunned. Despite the fact that he barely moved and left all the work to them, their faces are alight with fierce determination and joy. He can't help but wonder if they're secretly a group of battle junkies. He reflects on a harsh new reality. As long as he levels up as a seeker, he can no longer take pride in his martial strength. The system has made it clear that slaying any living being, even monsters that harm humans, goes against its philosophy and results in an experience penalty. He concludes it is better not to get too frustrated. The system's judgment is something he must simply accept, as it assigns experience for good and evil deeds based on its own inscrutable values. Back at his residence, a maid happily announces that his father has returned home. Salim is taken aback. His schedule is completely filled with studies for his pre-enrollment, leaving him no free time. His father, Duke Bergman, who is rarely at the castle, bellows with disbelief. He questions why Salim would want to shorten his private tutoring time, a crucial part of his education. Salim stands firm, explaining his desire for time to think and act for himself instead of blindly following his tutors. The Duke scoffs at this, calling him an insolent child. He declares that a brat should simply obey adults and that wasting time on such foolishness is only for showing off at school. Without warning, his father shouts, "Fireball!" and unleashes a blast of magic inside the ornate room. Salim realizes with horror that dodging will result in the destruction of the priceless furniture. Unable to bear seeing a masterpiece like the display shelf destroyed, he instantly conjures an ice wall barrier. The Duke watches, impressed. He recognizes the Bergman barrier, a composite magic developed by their family. He muses that a 14-year-old shouldn't be able to activate it so swiftly. Such mastery is the fruit of desperate training until the age of 17. As the barrier holds, Salim pleads with his father to at least take their fight outside, exclaiming that the furniture is said to be more precious than human lives. The Duke smirks, conceding that his son isn't all talk. At that moment, a system notification flashes in Salim's vision, deducting 100 experience points for not taking life lightly. The arbitrary penalty enrages him. He clenches his fist and dismisses the system's logic as a mere turn of phrase. Immediately, another penalty is issued. 50 experience points deducted for a poor attitude. His father, seemingly oblivious and completely out of control, readies his sword and commands him to cast the Bergman barrier again. Salim struggles to calm himself, forcing his focus onto the immediate task, minimizing the damage to the furniture. He recalled a future where this same reckless father fought to protect his people from the demon lord and died in the process. It was a stark contrast to his own future, where he was the one who would eventually succumb to a demon's temptation and become that very demon lord. As the crystalline structure of his ice wall barrier shattered around his father, Salim sighed internally, concluding that humans were truly hard to figure out. The effort left him drained. He realized that while his memories allowed him to activate the barrier, his young body simply didn't have the mana to sustain it. His father's voice cut through his fatigue, admitting that Salim had clearly been thinking this through. The Duke then erupted in a booming laugh, impressed that Salim had even managed to protect the nearby documents so neatly. He declared that while Salim had inherited his mother Erica's looks and personality, the only thing he got from his father was his voice. Salim managed a weak laugh, privately sighing with relief that his father was the type to be convinced by a show of strength. With the confrontation over, he felt he had finally secured time to focus on leveling up, especially since his strict mother was away. He decided that starting the next day, he would go to town and try interacting with people a step forward. Salim Bergman walks through the bustling city streets, a satisfied smile on his face. He congratulates himself on his perfect disguise, simple, plain clothes, and no escorts to give away his noble status. He lets out a quiet sigh of relief, pleased that his stealth mission is a success. To ensure no one would notice his absence, he had specifically instructed his maid, Mari, not to let anyone into his room. A notification suddenly appears before him, issuing a daily quest from the system: perform one good deed. He reflects on the constraints of his life. As the heir to a duke, his actions are always restricted, yet this quest requires him to interact with commoners. This is all to avoid the horrific future he remembers from his past life, where at 17 he became a demon lord, only to be destroyed by the hero. Just as he thought his soul would vanish, he returned to his 14-year-old body, where a mysterious seeker system commanded him to avoid evil and raise his level to overcome the temptation of demons. He resolves that his only course of action is to follow the system's guidance and level up. His eyes land on an elderly woman struggling to lift a heavy bucket of water from a well. Seizing the opportunity, he approaches her with a charming smile, offering to carry the heavy load for her. The woman looks up, startled, and asks who he is. In response to his offer, the woman shrewdly suggests that if he's free, he might as well clean her house. Salim is momentarily stunned by the request. Just then, a system notification confirms the daily quest is complete, rewarding him with 500 experience points. He now understands with certainty: interacting with commoners is the key to progress. The woman hands him a feather duster, but he simply stares at it, prompting her to ask what it is. When he admits he doesn't know, she expresses disbelief at his sheltered life before dismissing the matter. He examines the tool closely, deducing its purpose. He concludes that the cloth part is meant for gently dusting objects. With a sudden burst of energy, he attacks the dust with far too much force, instantly filling the room with a thick, choking cloud. Coughing amidst the dust, the woman scolds him, reminding him she's said to be gentle. She points out the dust accumulated in the high places he can't reach. Seeing the problem, Salim decides he will borrow a nearby desk to gain some height. However, instead of using the duster for cleaning, he begins to meticulously comb the hair of a doll with the duster's handle. The woman watches on, completely bewildered, wondering what on earth he is doing. He presents the cleaned container to the old woman, who sighs and corrects him. She is not an old lady. Her name is Amanda, and he should not address her without honorifics. After asking if he has any more containers, he proudly displays his handiwork, declaring it complete. She is surprised to see the dust neatly gathered inside, wondering if he is some kind of magic tool craftsman. He casually dismisses it as a hobby. Convinced of his skill, Amanda insists that it doesn't matter and that he is coming with her. She leads him into a nearby establishment, bursting through the door and calling for a man named Grandpa Johann. A man with a prominent mustache greets her warmly as Granny Amanda, his eyes immediately drawn to the handsome young man she has brought along. She points decisively at an old, rusty box sitting in the corner and commands Salim to fix it. He stares at the dilapidated object, confused about what it even is. He inspects it more closely, admitting to himself that he doesn't know much about its parts. However, he recognizes that the magical inscription has merely faded. He determines that by gathering, vibrating, and amplifying mana, he should be able to restore it. His work is a success. Amanda cheers with delight as Johann expresses his amazement and gratitude, explaining that it was too old for anyone else to bother with. A notification confirms Salim has repaired a magical tool, gained 100 experience points, and leveled up. Overjoyed by the event, Amanda declares that it's been too long since they've had a party. She decides on the spot to call the neighbors for a karaoke party. She rallies the other elderly citizens who have gathered, preparing for the festivities. Salim is completely baffled, wondering what karaoke is and what strange contraption they are setting up. Another notification appears. The elderly have regained their joy, granting him 500 more experience points. He can only muse on the strange ways commoners entertain themselves. Later, Amanda finds him, noting that this is the third day he has appeared. She asks if he is just a bored rich man or if this is some kind of hobby. Salim denies it, explaining plainly that he is trying to level up. Her question about what level up means prompts him to clarify that he wants to do one good deed a day. Amanda remarks that he is a strange young master, but warns that today's issue might be too much for him. Intrigued, Salim asks her to tell him what it is. He is brought before a registration desk by Amanda, who announces that the boy will be participating in her place today. Another elderly woman, observing Salim's fine clothes and delicate features, expresses her astonishment and questions what Amanda plans to have him do. In response, Amanda declares with a sharp look that his task is obvious, gutter cleaning. Deciding that if he must do the job, he will do it properly, he invokes earth magic. With a cry of clay wave, he conjures a swirling vortex of energy that lifts all the filth from the gutters in a single, efficient motion. He holds a magically contained sphere of grime and asks a nearby woman where he should take it. Flustered, she directs him to a vacant lot. After disposing of the waste, a notice appears in his vision. He has gained 100 EXP for cleaning the town and completed his daily quest of one good deed a day, earning an additional 500 EXP. He returns to Amanda and presents her with a participation prize. She eyes him suspiciously, questioning how his clothes remained so clean after cleaning gutters. He explains that he had a thin barrier wrapped around his body to avoid getting dirty, which would alert his family. With a sigh, Amanda offers him a cookie she earned as her own prize. He coolly refuses, stating he isn't starving and that since his business is concluded, he is going home. His dismissiveness incites her anger, and she suddenly shouts at him, calling him an ungrateful brat. Startled by her outburst, he wonders what prompted it. Amanda lectures him that when someone offers food, he should at least smile and try it. This sparks a realization in Salim. He needs to learn the manners of commoners, and perhaps this is the key to completing his daily good deeds. He resolves to follow her instruction. As Amanda continues, explaining that one should simply accept a gift and say thank you, he takes a bite of the cookie. To his surprise, he finds it's actually quite good, a simple pleasure he hadn't anticipated. He reflects on his recent interactions. Helping Amanda with the gutter cleaning had been a lesson in itself. She was a capable woman who understood the fabric of the community. By solving the problems of the commoners, like fixing leaky roofs, he had steadily gained experience and leveled up, all while enduring Amanda's sharp-tongued dismissal to just go home. As the new year began, he found that tasks like cleaning had become a breeze. He was no longer just Amanda's handyman, but a helper for the entire town. A series of notifications suddenly appeared before him. Cleaning Amanda's house had earned him experience, and completing his daily quest for a good deed and a prayer had yielded a massive 500 experience points. To his astonishment, he saw he had leveled up from -1 directly to level 2 and had acquired a new message and a new skill. He erupts in a triumphant shout, exclaiming that he's finally out of the negative levels. Startled by the outburst, Amanda snaps at him for being so loud. She quickly softens, however, and offers him an apple to celebrate whatever good thing had happened. She remarks wryly that from her perspective, his head has always been in the clouds. Accepting her offer, he takes a bite and feels a sense of pure bliss, as if he were in heaven. While eating, he mulls over his level up. He had been tracking his experience and knew the threshold was 100 points. Jumping straight from -1 to 2, completely skipping level 1, meant the leveling requirements must have changed. He surmised that gaining levels would likely become more difficult from now on. He then turns his attention to the other system notifications. The new message revealed he had acquired a healing skill for treating small cuts and abrasions. He wondered if this was different from his innate healing magic, which was already powerful enough to heal minor wounds instantly. Deciding to test it, he mused aloud, only for Amanda to scoff at the idea, pointing out the scarcity of skilled healers. She questioned his sudden whim, but then conceded that with him, anything seemed possible. In a shockingly pragmatic move, Amanda slices her own finger with a paring knife. Salim stares, aghast, stammering that he didn't mean for her to actually hurt herself. Unfazed, she presents the small, bleeding scratch to him. She urges him to hurry and heal it, calling it a pain if it starts to bleed more. He feels a sense of pressure. With his regular magic, he could instinctively move mana to heal, but with this new skill, he felt no such connection. He had no idea how to activate it. As he focuses on her injured finger, a prompt materializes in his vision. A treatable wound has been detected. Would you like to heal? He realizes the skill is automatic. The system handles it. Upon his mental assent, the cut on Amanda's finger vanishes completely. It worked. However, he notices his experience points remain unchanged. He concludes that healing wounds made on purpose must not grant any rewards. To test his theory, he asks Amanda if she knows anyone with real injuries. She thinks for a moment, then suggests the children who play in the vacant lot, noting they're always covered in scrapes. He arrived at the vacant lot with Amanda, his mind on his status. It now showed him as a level 2 seeker, with new entries for MP and healing skill proficiency. He found the system's explanations frustratingly vague and resolved to investigate what the numbers meant. Amanda, meanwhile, urged him to lead the way. Their arrival immediately drew the attention of the children, who swarmed around the old woman, calling out her name. One child excitedly asked who the handsome young man with her was, but another boy with a fierce expression snapped at them to stop saying such foolish things. His attention, however, was drawn to a small boy with a scraped knee. The child mentioned he had just tripped, and at that moment, Salim's system detected a treatable wound, asking if he wished to heal it. He knelt down, asking the boy what was wrong with his knee, though his directness seemed to unnerve the other children. A moment later, the boy's eyes widened in astonishment. The pain was gone, the wound completely healed. He exclaimed that the big brother had healed him and eagerly asked for his name. A notification confirmed the success. His experience had increased by 100 points. The simple question gave him pause. He realized that in the past 2 months, Amanda had never asked for his name, and he had simply been nameless. Concluding this was inconvenient, he decided it was time to choose an alias. Amanda, overhearing his muttering, dryly remarked that if he wanted people to ask his name, he should have spoken up himself. With a sudden, bright smile, he announced his chosen name, Gonbi. Having settled on a name, he turned his attention back to the task at hand, calling for all the children with injuries to come forward. One after another, they presented their scrapes and bruises, and with each successful healing, his experience climbed by another 100 points, rapidly raising his level to 4. His status reflected this significant progress. He was now Salim Bergman, a level 4 seeker, with his MP at 920 out of a total of 7,691, and his healing skill proficiency had soared to 97. Later, while resting, he finally had time to process the day's events. He had unlocked the ability to use skills, and while treating the children, he had begun to understand what skills and MP truly meant. He concluded that MP was simply a numerical value for his magical power, and the system automatically consumed it when he used a skill no different from casting magic himself. He then pondered if the number represented his maximum magical power. Without anything to compare it to, he had no way of knowing if his capacity was vast or meager. He continued to ponder the cost of his actions. While being able to heal others was a special skill, its magic efficiency seemed terribly low. He knew that healing similar wounds on his own body would consume a minuscule amount of magic, yet treating the light injuries of just 10 people had drained a significant portion of his MP. As he lay in bed later, the numbers finally clicked into place. A sudden jolt of understanding shot through him. If he did the math, healing those wounds had consumed over half of his maximum MP. The realization was stark. This was completely impractical for any sustained use. His mind raced, searching for an explanation, until a new thought surfaced. He finally understood. That must be what the healing skill proficiency stat was for. If that number increased, the magic efficiency would surely improve. He sighed in frustration. The system was terrible at explaining its own mechanics. To avoid the worst-case scenario, he had no choice but to figure it out on his own. His resolve hardened. Testing would begin tomorrow. Salim Bergman, now 15 years old, returns to the snowy clearing where the children gather. He asks if anyone is hurt, having come to check on them, but a young girl informs him that the healing is already complete. She explains that Gonbi-san healed everyone the day before. His status as a level 5 seeker is noted, his healing skill proficiency high. He is taken aback, stammering that he had come to test his abilities. One of the children, noticing his troubled expression, asks what's wrong and questions if he's only looking for injured people so he can be nice. Another child then suggests that if he's looking for others to heal, he should check out the other hangout spots. One of the boys explains that while they group up, making them easier to find, they can't enter the turf of other groups. However, they believe that Salim, as Gonbi-san, can go anywhere he pleases. Salim quietly processes this information, realizing that even among commoner children, territories exist. Taking their advice, he seeks out other children and continues his work, each successful healing granting him another 100 experience points. Later that day, resting in his lavish bedroom, he reflects on his progress. Having healed 10 children, he noticed his mana consumption was more efficient than the day before. He realizes that as his proficiency increases, so does his efficiency, and resolves to focus on this path to unlock even more useful healing skills. His efforts have already raised him to Seeker level 7. After spending a few more days making his rounds and healing those in need, he finds himself on the cusp of reaching level 10. As he tends to another child, a hooded figure approaches from behind, sharply asking if he is the one they are looking for. The figures are clerics from a church. The lead woman declares that healing is a sacred art handled exclusively by them, and accuses him of pretending to heal people. As the children nearby whisper that the church only helps the rich, another cleric extends a hand, offering Salim a special baptism and a proper place within their institution. His expression hardens into a cold glare. "I refuse," he states plainly. Internally, he questions why he would ever accept anything from an organization that deducts experience points for a simple donation. The lead cleric is enraged by his defiance, demanding to know who he is and how he dares disrespect the church's authority. He knows he cannot reveal his true status as the eldest son of a ducal house while in disguise. Instead of arguing, he raises a hand, conjuring a complex, glowing magical sigil in the air before him. With a single commanding word, he tells them, "Be gone." The children, far from being frightened, erupt in cheers. They exclaim that his display of magic was awesome and felt good. Salim, clutching his chest, lets out a sigh of relief, realizing he hadn't scared them after all. The next day, he let out a sigh of relief after another session of healing the local children. His moment of peace was shattered as several robed figures cornered him. He immediately identified them as church agents, likely drawn by his activities the day before. One of them spoke, his voice low and commanding, telling Salim to come with them quietly. Realizing they had led him to a back alley to avoid prying eyes, he understood they were trying to conceal his identity. This meant that if they discovered who he was, they wouldn't spread the information. Without hesitation, he cast an ice wall barrier, shocking the agents. One of them recognized the crest of the Bergman house, and Salim warned them, questioning if they could take responsibility for whatever might happen to him. The threat was effective. The agents fled in panic, one shouting to his captain that he recognized the boy's face. Watching them retreat, Salim felt a wave of relief. He mused on the church's obsession with controlling every healing mage, glad he had avoided a direct fight that the system might have penalized by deducting experience points. Returning to his work, he healed another child's injury. A notification appeared, informing him that his experience had increased, he had leveled up to 10, and a new skill had been acquired. A young girl thanked him as he celebrated his achievement, deciding to investigate the new skill later. He soon found a moment to examine the ability. It was a stamina support skill, capable of restoring stamina to those weakened by illness but unable to cure the illness itself. He deemed it a tricky skill to use well, but reaffirmed his commitment to follow the system's guidance to level up and strengthen his mind, all to avoid a terrible future he remembered. An idea for its use quickly formed. He approached an elderly woman named Amanda, asking if she knew anyone who was bedridden. Surprised, she asked if he could heal them. He clarified that he could only help them regain stamina, but acknowledged that stamina was important too. Amanda eagerly led him into a shop, where he apologized to the proprietor, Grandpa Johann, for barging in. Amanda explained to Johann that Salim was the one who had fixed her magical tool. Then Salim asked if Johann's granddaughter was in the back room. The old man confirmed that his granddaughter, Zafi, had been bedridden for days. From her bed, a weak voice apologized, saying she was too tired to even sit up. As the system prompted him to assist, Salim rushed into the room, announcing his arrival to Zafi. He activated the skill. Zafi sat up, startled, wondering why she suddenly felt so much better. She expressed her gratitude, and the system confirmed the successful use of the ability, granting him more experience. The onlookers asked if he could cure illnesses, but he explained that it was not a cure, merely a temporary restoration of strength. He listens as the shopkeeper, Johann, explains the plight of his granddaughter, Zafi. After contracting Grelna disease, an infection common among the poor with low magical resistance, she was cast out of her husband's home, leaving her with no one but her grandfather to rely on. The old man's expression darkens as he describes the cruel nature of the illness, which gradually weakens its victims until death. He notes that while most commoners have low magical capacity, those with high power are rare. He desperately pleads with Salim to use his magic to ease Zafi's suffering, even if only a little. His desperation crescendos into a shout as he insists on payment, offering the proceeds from selling their shop. He cries out that if the shop is gone, they will lose their only joy in life. In response to the outburst, he calmly declines the offer. He explains that he doesn't need money. The experience gained from healing is reward enough. Johann is struck silent, moved by the young man's generosity. His treatments continue, and 1 month later, the results are clear. Zafi is outside shoveling snow, looking vibrant and healthy. She tells a pleased Amanda that she honestly doesn't even feel sick anymore. He clarifies to Amanda that his skill doesn't cure the illness directly. It works by preventing the disease from draining stamina, which allows the body's natural resistance to fight it off. He reflects that nobles likely recover from sickness quickly because of their inherently high magic power. As Zafi cheerfully jokes that she might actually be cured, a notification appears only he can see. Illness has been completely cured. Experience increased. 1,000 EXP gained. His current level is now 19. The confirmation startles him. He murmurs aloud that she really is completely cured, a fact that leaves Zafi stunned and speechless. From the doorway, Amanda gasps in shock. Overjoyed, Zafi thanks him profusely before dashing off to tell her grandfather the miraculous news. As she leaves, Amanda explains to Salim that Johann hosts regular meetings at the shop for families of Grelna patients. This leads to a gathering of hopeful villagers inside the shop. Salim explains that his ability is stamina support, and that recovery ultimately depends on a person's own resistance. A determined man, speaking for the group, accepts the terms and asks him to start with the houses nearest the shop. As he walked with the villagers, Amanda confessed that while she had told Zafi about his stamina support ability, she hadn't been able to tell everyone else. She reasoned that if there was even a small chance for them to get better, it was important to give people that hope. He began the treatments, methodically using his skill on one sick person after another, gaining experience with each application. A woman explained to her husband that while recovery wasn't guaranteed for a disease that normally can't be cured, just having hope made a difference. After the third treatment, Salim felt a surge of power as he leveled up, acquiring a new skill in the process. The new skill was called Cure Diseases Resistible through Immunity. He immediately thought it sounded worth testing. With 3 more patients scheduled and his magic points dwindling, he considered asking the last patient if they would be willing to let him try it. Despite his curiosity, he continued with the familiar stamina support for the time being. The description of a new skill, which mentioned that the target's condition will rapidly change and consume their stamina, sounded ominous. He found it hard to believe the system would grant him a totally useless skill. His efforts produced immediate results for the next patient, a young woman named Laura. She sat up in bed, hands clasped together, declaring that it felt like a miracle. She was suddenly filled with so much energy and offered her heartfelt thanks. As Laura's husband asked if she was all right to get up, she insisted she was and offered to get tea. Salim quickly advised her not to push herself, reminding her that regaining stamina didn't mean she was fully healed. Seeing he still had some magic points left, he decided to make a suggestion, offering to try his new skill. His suggestion stunned her husband, who turned to Laura in disbelief. He asked if it was true, if there was really a way to heal the illness all at once. He explained to the gathered villagers that he had learned of this method through extensive use of his skills. Amanda immediately questioned why he hadn't used it on Zafi. Salim's expression hardened as he warned them that the method causes rapid changes and drains stamina fast, and that it might be painful. Sensing their hesitation, he apologized for being so abrupt and offered to return the next day to continue the gradual stamina support. But Laura, her face streaked with tears, spoke with sudden urgency. She wanted to be healed quickly. She cried out that his offer wasn't what was painful. The illness itself had been painful from the very beginning. After so long, she couldn't bear to keep burdening her husband. As her husband embraced her, telling her not to worry and that they could take it slow, Salim and Amanda watched on. She pleaded with him to proceed, even if the faster method was more painful. Faced with a system prompt to use immune manipulation, Salim confirmed her resolve one last time. With her desperate consent, he agreed to begin the treatment. The effect was immediate and violent. She convulsed as a sharp cry of pain escaped her lips. The system reported that her stamina was being drained by the intense immune response, causing physical damage, and it automatically began combining stamina support and simple healing to compensate. Her husband cried out in alarm as her fever began to spike. An elderly woman rushed to place a cool cloth on her forehead. Salim watched the rapid progression of the treatment with a tense expression, cursing his own power. He was racked with guilt, realizing this was all because he wanted to test the skill. He reflected on how the system, a creation of the devil, always urged good deeds. He feared he had trusted this unknown power too much, but steeled his resolve, believing he could resist the temptation and change the future. His internal struggle was interrupted as he overheard the husband worrying that Salim's absence from the castle would soon be noticed. Despite the personal risk, Salim knew he could not abandon Laura now. He remained by her side, his anxiety a chilling echo of his time bound to the demon. As Laura's husband watched in confusion, Salim could only stand vigil, silently questioning if his magic would last. The healing was entirely managed by the system, leaving him powerless but to clench his fist and focus his thoughts on Laura. By morning, the crisis had passed. Laura was awake and sitting up. Her husband, overjoyed, rushed to her side, asking if she was all right and offering to fetch breakfast. Looking weary but well, Laura apologized for having kept them all up through the night. As she spoke, a system message confirmed the treatment's success. The illness was completely cured, and he had gained 1,000 experience points. The elderly woman checked on Laura, reporting that she felt wonderful, merely a bit sluggish after the ordeal. With the patient now safe, he announced the treatment was over and turned to leave, stating his desire to be alone. Laura's husband rushed after him, filled with remorse, offering payment and apologizing for his earlier doubts. Salim curtly refused the money, insisting he had more than enough. Despite the refusal, the husband's gratitude overflowed. He tearfully thanked Salim for saving Laura, vowing to do anything to repay the debt. As Salim walked away, the man finally registered his noble attire. Salim, however, privately reflected that there was likely nothing he would ever need from the man. He is met with a chorus of heartfelt thanks from the villagers. Laura's husband, overcome with emotion, clasps his hands and insists that their gratitude is genuine. Salim recalls Amanda's words to him, that if someone offers help, he should simply accept it. The advice resonates with him, feeling like the correct path to follow in this moment. With a gentle expression, he accepts their offer, promising to ask if he ever needs anything. In this exchange, a new connection begins to form. Salim Bergman's eyes flutter open to the sight of his maid, Mari, weeping with relief at his bedside. She exclaims his name, thankful that he has finally awoken. Groggy, he recognizes her as he realizes it is morning. As he slowly regained consciousness, his mind drifted back to the previous morning. He remembered his father, Duke Bergman, storming into his room, demanding to know what he had been doing. The Duke berated him for lacking the awareness befitting the heir to their house, to which Salim could only meekly reply that he had been helping people in the city. He recalled the aftermath of that confrontation. After taking several hits from his father's attack, he had stayed up all night using healing skills, his ice wall barrier barely holding. The strain had been too much. He had passed out from complete magical exhaustion. The memory faded as he focused on the present, where Mari was tending to him. He asked if he had caused her any trouble, but she quickly reassured him that he was fine. She insisted that taking care of him was her job, and that he shouldn't bow to someone like her. Her gentle words sparked a profound realization within him. He understood that if he continued to act on his own, he could cause trouble for Mari and the other servants, who might be punished for his actions. As the heir to the Duke's family, he decided it was time to stop sneaking around. Resolved to change his ways, he soon found himself facing his father on the training grounds. The Duke noted that Salim was finally awake, and, considering it an act of mercy for his previous screw-up, was giving him a second chance. To earn the right to speak his mind, the Duke declared, Selim would have to show his strength. With the terms set, the Duke wasted no time, lunging forward with explosive speed. He immediately began to evade, his mind racing. He knew a direct fight would drain his mana, just like yesterday. His strategy was to dodge while maintaining his barrier, enhancing his physical abilities with magic. His father, unimpressed, yelled for him to stop darting around and then unleashed a massive sphere of fire. As the massive fireball hurtled towards him, his thoughts turned to the safety of the castle's servants. He dodged the first attack and erected an ice wall barrier to block a second. While the barrier could handle a simple fireball, he felt his magic points draining rapidly, realizing his mana was no match for his father's power. Though his barrier held, the Duke lowered his sword with a smirk. To Selim's astonishment, his father praised him, remarking that it wasn't bad at all and that he had grown strong. Selim could only stare in shock, thinking how terrifying his father was, knowing that a single misstep could have been a disaster. He reveals that a few weeks prior, a messenger from the church had come, claiming Selim possessed a talent for healing magic and that they intended to take him in. The Duke found their persistence rude and refused them outright. Selim listens, realizing this must be why he suspected the church when he failed to return home 2 nights ago. His father then presses him, asking if he can truly use healing magic. Internally, Selim fumes, recalling how close he came to attacking the church's representatives. He cautiously explains that he can heal minor wounds and illnesses, specifying that it is a healing skill, not magic, a distinction he must make to avoid being flagged for a lie by the system. The Duke scoffs at the admission, dismissing healing magic as a useless ability for nobles. He accuses his son of sneaking out to the town to cure commoners for his own self-satisfaction, calling it a hypocritical farce. Selim acknowledges the harshness of the words, but understands the sentiment. Most nobles would devalue such a skill, as their own magic can already handle minor injuries. He refutes the accusation, explaining his true ambition. He believes that with enough experience, his healing skill can surpass a noble's natural regeneration, eventually allowing him to treat injuries that even self-recovery cannot handle, a feat no other mage in the country can achieve. With confidence, he declares that as the firstborn of the house, he will achieve this goal. His father seems to accept this, stating there is no longer a reason to restrain him and permitting him to do as he pleases. As the Duke departs, Selim has a profound realization. Because the system did not flag his bold claim as a lie, his bluff might actually be an achievable future. This newfound freedom allows him to pursue his goal properly. In his study, he reflects that while his healing skill works automatically, relying on it without true medical knowledge is too dangerous. He resolves to study medicine and pharmacology from the beginning, now able to visit the town openly. He quickly discovers that this path is more difficult than anticipated. Medicine is the domain of the church, which he refuses to join, and his attempts to hire a private tutor are rejected. He sighs, understanding that apothecaries are tied to powerful nobles, making it an ordeal to find anyone willing to teach him. A new idea strikes him. Commoners are the most frequently ill, so he should seek a teacher in the parts of town where they gather. His thoughts are shattered by a tremendous racket from outside, as someone frantically bangs on a door, shouting for Amanda the apothecary to teach them pharmacology. Having rushed to the source of the commotion, a breathless Selim confronts the woman, Amanda. She confirms she was once an apothecary, but is now retired. When he mentions that Johann sent him, she expresses disbelief that he would seek her tutelage, especially after he succeeded in curing the Gerelna disease, a feat she could not accomplish. He explains his reasoning. Though his skill can cure diseases, using it without proper knowledge feels dangerous. Amanda concedes the point, but warns that pharmacology requires years of study. Undeterred, Selim asks her to come to the capital. She refuses to leave her lifelong home, but, sighing, admits she cannot let his powerful ability go unchecked. She agrees to teach him what she can, so long as he remains in town. Overjoyed, Selim thanks her profusely. He formally introduced himself, revealing his true name, Selim Bergman, the eldest son of the Duke who governs the region. The surrounding villagers reacted with shock. Amanda, however, simply sighed, remarking that most had already guessed he was a noble due to his immense mana. She explained they had no choice but to treat him as the commoner Gonbi, since that was the name he gave. She agreed to make their master-apprentice bond official, noting that her late master had stressed the importance of such formalities. Though she still found the Lord's son to be a strange person, she accepted him. Selim, in turn, formally accepted her as his teacher, but requested she continue treating him as she had been, as he valued the experience of observing commoners' lives. With their arrangement settled, Amanda asked where to begin their studies. She suggested focusing on something that would complement his healing skill. Selim agreed, stating his desire to learn how to treat illnesses, believing the principles to be similar to healing wounds. Amanda mused that learning from real cases is best, but as she's been retired, she is unsure of how many sick people there are. In response, Selim resolved to find patients himself. His attention was soon pulled back to his duties as a noble. A head attendant approached, informing him that 15 new candidates had passed the entrance exam for the Royal First Magic Academy. This brought the total number of his attendants to 22. Elsewhere, his followers were dismayed. Gilbert Benson angrily questioned how they were losing to the Louisver faction, which now numbered 24 members to their 16. He lamented the disgraceful outcome of over half their candidates failing the exam, and that Valerie hadn't even been able to take it. Salim appeared before the group, calmly explaining that the Louisver family hail from a harsh northwestern territory known for hunting, making it logical that their members would excel at the school's combat-heavy exams. He reassured his followers not to worry about numbers, promising they would all pass eventually. His words lifted their spirits, though he privately reflected that the stress from such factional rivalries created openings for demons to exploit. He then addressed his core group, stating that he no longer cared much for the size of noble factions. Reminding them of his newfound healing ability, he asked for their help with a new endeavor. The sharp young man with glasses understood at once. Salim tasked him with gathering information on the sick within the capital, confident in his abilities. Internally, however, Salim felt a need to remain cautious, though the reason for this feeling was unclear to him. Inspired by his new purpose, the rest of his followers, led by an enthusiastic Gilbert, eagerly volunteered to help as well. Salim looked upon them, acknowledging that every one of them was important. He reflected that with the help of Amanda and his aides, his study of pharmacology could truly begin. He and Amanda began treating many patients side by side. They frequently encountered two particular illnesses: Grelina disease, which afflicted those with weak magic and immunity, and Zoran disease, which targeted children. Amanda explained that Zoran disease is also called the trial before 10, a rite of passage for children, but one with a terrifyingly high mortality rate. He arrives at an orphanage to find a Zoran outbreak in full swing. The manager, his hands clasped in gratitude, is amazed that Salim Sama, who had previously donated to them, is now personally treating the sick children. As he works, a small girl knocks and enters the room, asking if everyone will get better. Amanda questions if it's safe for her to be there, but Salim reassures her. He explains that for the girl to be walking around during an outbreak means she has either high magic power or strong immunity, noting that some children recover from Zoran without ever showing symptoms. He turns his attention to the child, deducing that with the disease spreading so widely, she has almost certainly been infected as well, even if she appears healthy. A faint glow emanates from his hand as he reaches toward her. The girl gasps in surprise, suddenly feeling her body become incredibly light. Salim realizes that, as expected, even without developing symptoms, the illness had still been draining her stamina. Her newfound energy brings a wide smile to her face as she asks if they can all play together again soon. Salim agrees, encouraging her to cheer on the others to speed their recovery. From a nearby bed, another boy murmurs that he's glad he's not the only one hurting, saying he'd rather be together with everyone. The boy's sentiment strikes Salim as peculiar. He finds it a strange thing for a child to say, as if the boy wanted to suffer alongside his friends. The little girl clarifies, sniffling, that the sick boy is her closest friend. All she wants is for him to get better so they can play together again, just like they used to. Salim kneels, comforting her. His work continues with other patients. He treats a young man, successfully healing a skin irritation and numbness in his leg, but observes that some illnesses simply don't respond to immune manipulation. Hearing this, the man cries out in despair, believing his condition is untreatable. In response to the man's outburst, Amanda storms over and forcefully shoves a cup of green liquid into his mouth, yelling at him to drink it. She declares that this is what happens when one doesn't eat real food and berates him for causing a scene. Salim watches, bewildered by the sudden intervention. She explains that the man had been performing a stunt at a tavern, eating nothing but bread rolls for a year to get attention. This extreme diet imbalanced his mana, causing a host of problems. As she speaks, the man begins to feel better, and Salim sighs, having learned something new about the world's strange people and their even stranger illnesses. He is met with a desperate plea from a woman whose husband lies gravely ill. She explains that the man ate monster meat purchased from a suspicious merchant, and now he is in critical condition. At the man's bedside, Amanda explains that while some monster meat is edible, other types can cause deadly food poisoning. The wife begs them to do something, but Salim looks at the ailing man and grimly concludes that this illness is untreatable. Despite his prognosis, Amanda immediately administers a medicine to the man. She explains that the first priority is to help him regain his strength for stamina support. While it won't cure the monster meat poisoning, she notes, it will slightly increase his chances of recovery. Salim observes her fatalistic approach. If he's meant to die, he will. As he watches her work, a sudden realization strikes him. A query appears in his mind. The illness is treatable, and he has the option to use immune manipulation. He now understands he can heal the man, his sudden shift in expression startling Amanda and the wife. Sometime later, the man's wife expresses her profound gratitude. She explains that while the monster meat was rumored to have toxin-neutralizing properties, many still died after eating it, leading to widespread doubt. Thanks to Salim's power, they now have proof that the medicine truly aids in detoxification. He reflects on her words, realizing he needs to study medication more thoroughly to effectively combine it with his healing skills. He wonders aloud what the active ingredient was, as the now healthy couple looks on with smiles. Seeking answers, he asks Amanda, who explains the medicine comes from a frog-type monster. It's a weak creature found only in the Bergman territory, making its medicine highly priced elsewhere. She reveals that its poison glands, when processed, become the cure, a method of fighting poison with poison. Since he's heading to the capital, she offers to teach him where to find the necessary tools. Her knowledge and demeanor bring a smile to his face. He muses that she's like a witch from a storybook, a fitting image for her. He acknowledges that by learning so much from Amanda, his own level has been steadily rising. That thought seems to trigger a notification that materializes before him at his desk. It congratulates him for reaching level 30 and completing his beginner-level grinding, rewarding him with a new skill, forest bathing. His main quest is updated to intermediate difficulty, with the next goal being level 50, at which point he will awaken his holy attribute, which cancels out the dark attribute. He considers this new information, reviewing his growing list of skills. He notes that while they are rare, their uses are limited. At his current pace, he estimates he will arrive at the Royal Capital Academy in about 3 months. He resolves that to gain the power needed to fight demons, his first priority must be to reach level 50 and awaken the holy attribute that nullifies his darkness. He stood before the grand doors, a bouquet of flowers in hand, as the entire household staff gathered in 2 neat lines to bid him farewell. Nadia watched from the doorway, overseeing the departure. On the day of his departure, he turned to Mari and thanked her for all her care. With tears in her eyes, the young maid wished him well, expressing how fortunate she felt to have served him. The children he had cured of the Grelna disease also chimed in with their thanks, prompting him to apologize for having relied on them so much. His attention was then drawn by a young man named Nagi stepping forward. Nagi asked if he remembered a past promise, stating that he now had a favor to ask. Holding the single flower Nagi offered, Salim readily agreed, promising to do anything within his power. Following Nagi's lead, a crowd of villagers surged forward, all expressing their profound gratitude. Amanda thanked him for everything, while others presented him with flowers they had brought. They praised him as a truly rare person, one who heals without expecting anything in return, acting only for the sake of others. He looked down at a small flower a child had picked for him from Amanda's garden. As he held the delicate gift, he noticed with a sigh that it was already beginning to wilt. Unwilling to let such a precious gift fade, he quietly used his vital support skill. A gentle light enveloped the bouquet, restoring the flowers to their full bloom. He mused that even the system seemed to be celebrating his departure. Holding the vibrant bouquet, surrounded by the hopeful faces of the villagers, he thanked them all and set off on his journey. Salim Bergman has finally enrolled in the Royal Capital's first Academy of Magic. This year is particularly significant, as the kingdom's own crown princess is among the new students. In response, powerful nobles from across the country have sent their children, hoping they will become her close companions. Salim counts himself among them. As the lengthy entrance ceremony concludes, Gilbert complains about its duration while eagerly asking Valerie about the welcome party. Another companion notes that Salim seems to have already scouted the facilities, but Salim quietly corrects him. This is his second time enrolling in this academy, as he possesses memories of a previous future. His mind flashes back to that timeline. In the winter of his second year, he succumbed to a demon's temptation, becoming a demon lord who was ultimately slain by the hero. With that power, he destroyed the kingdom. His life ended at 17, his soul devoured for over a decade, until, just as the last fragment was about to disappear, he awoke in his 14-year-old body, before he had ever set foot in the academy. He remembers that after arriving in the royal capital, a mysterious system gave him a quest to resist the demon's temptation by leveling up. Though he didn't understand it at first, he now follows the system's guidance, training to strengthen his will. 1 week before the entrance ceremony, he and his companions had arrived at the massive estate of Duke Bergman. They would be attending the academy from this grand mansion. His friend Gilbert is awestruck by the luxury, but Salim calmly tells him not to hold back, as it's merely a display of the Duke's pride. He then asks his friends to continue assisting him in training his healing skills, and they all readily agree. An attendant from the Duke's household informs Salim that he has brought 2 people from a merchant family, as requested, to help find patients. The attendant advises that healing magic training is best done at night, as the church holds great influence in the capital. A young woman with them reports that someone is in urgent need of help. The cause is food poisoning from monster meat, a condition Salim has treated before with Amanda's help. She leads him to a poor district with damaged roofs and cracked walls. Salim is taken aback, realizing that even in the capital, commoners live in such squalor. He sees the sick lying together, groaning in pain, and recognizes the symptoms immediately. A wave of guilt washes over him as he notes that the cracks in the walls, damage from the demon invasion in his past life, were already present back then, in a place he never bothered to notice. He counts 7 patients, a number he can handle. He activates a healing skill, parallel operation, which allows him to manipulate the immune systems of up to 7 individuals simultaneously. As he begins the treatment, he tells Nadia and Valerie, who are standing guard, to feel free to rest, as the process will take some time. He has arranged for a team of 20 attendants to rotate and assist, ensuring no one overexerts themselves. Once the treatment is complete, the patients begin to feel better. They are astonished to learn that their savior is Salim Bergman, a duke's son. The villagers explain that they are all from the same orphanage and were tricked into buying cheap, tainted meat while trying to start business. Overwhelmed with gratitude for the food and healing, their heartfelt thanks leave Salim speechless and deeply moved. He felt a sudden, overwhelming surge as information flooded his mind. The system repeatedly announced that he had cured the illness, awarding him 1,000 experience points for each person healed. The influx was so great that it triggered a level up, bringing his current level to 32. He processed the massive experience gain from treating 7 people at once, realizing that if he could continue to gain levels at this rate, he would become unstoppable. His thoughts were interrupted by a young villager, who expressed immense gratitude for his recovery and praised the young lord's kindness, bringing a smile to Salim's face. Sometime later, he found himself in a completely different environment, a bustling party venue. He noted that it had been a long time since he was surrounded by so many people, reflecting that his life would now be filled with politics and schemes, a stark contrast to the simpler days he once knew. He recalled a future that once was, a time when he was proud and boasted of his status as the heir to the Duke's family. That arrogance had only earned him mockery and hatred. He resolved that this time, he must act differently simply to avoid being looked down upon. He resolved to carry himself not with arrogance, but with the elegance of a true noble, determined not to let that painful future come to pass again. As he maintained a composed posture, he noticed a group of young ladies glancing his way with admiration. His newfound popularity did not go unnoticed. A young woman named Lisa, a third-year student and daughter of Viscount Belcher, observed him from afar. She found it strange to be so captivated by him, noting that his princely appearance had made him popular with the other ladies. She recalled that in the previous future, he was arrogant and full of himself, and she had never looked at him twice. She wondered how much his actions had changed to alter people's perceptions so drastically. Just then, the atmosphere in the hall shifted with the arrival of Crown Princess Rafaela. She entered with only 2 attendants, a fact that Gilbert pointed out. His companion explained that the princess dislikes being surrounded by large crowds. Lisa, seeing an opportunity, suggested to Salim and Gilbert that they go and greet her together. He stepped forward and bowed formally, offering his greetings to the Crown Princess. He introduced himself as Salim Bergman, firstborn of House Bergman, and stated it was an honor to attend the academy with her for the next 3 years. She acknowledged him coolly, looking forward to their time together. As she spoke, Salim recalled a chilling fact. Even in the future when he became a demon, Princess Rafaela was an opponent he could never defeat. The current king has 2 daughters, Princess Rafaela and the younger Princess Amelia. From an early age, Rafaela was chosen to be the crown princess, a decision made due to her extraordinary and immense magical power. He studied her, noting that while she looked delicate and young, it was said her combat skills rivaled even those of the first king. He knew they were both 15, the same age, but she seemed even younger than he remembered from the future he was trying so desperately to change. He recalled that Princess Rafaela never liked small talk and observed her blank expression, resolving to keep his greetings brief. As he stepped forward, an attendant formally announced him. Now, Lord Bergman. Before he could speak, another young woman rushed to the princess's side, showering her with praise. Salim identified her as Lady Gelsomina Durante, daughter of a court earl and a candidate for royal attendant, sent by the Duke's house to help ease the conversation. He mused on the uncanny resemblance of one of the characters to Lord Bergman. Having navigated the tense introduction, he breathed a sigh of relief, thinking he couldn't even imagine getting close to the princess. For now, he would simply wait to greet the others. Lady Gelsomina, meanwhile, privately recalled that even in the future, the princess was always kind, at least to her. His thoughts drifted to the princess's nature. For all her overwhelming strength, she remained quiet and indifferent to those around her. Her overall ability, including her political acumen, was rumored to be even greater than that of a marquis daughter. As if summoned by his thoughts, a young woman with long, dark hair approached him with a graceful curtsy. She introduced herself as Nadia Louisver, the eldest daughter of Marquis Louisver. He recognized the name immediately. She was the one rumored to be even more capable than a princess. Nadia met his gaze and stated that she looked forward to spending the next 3 years at the academy with him. She continued, noting that House Louisver had sent 24 students to the academy, more than his own house. A vision from his past life flooded Salim's mind. After the capital fell to the demons, House Louisver resisted until the very end, saving countless lives. He knew then that her unmatched command ability would be crucial in the coming war. Nadia's voice pulled him from his reverie. She informed him that word of his reputation had already reached her father, the Marquis. She knew of the magical tools he developed for poor villagers and, more surprisingly, his recent use of healing magic to help the sick. With a hand to her chest, she looked at him with sincere respect. "That's truly admirable," she said, adding, "I wish I could be like you someday." As she departed, Salim stood in stunned silence. He wondered how she could have possibly found out about his healing magic, something he had only recently learned and used in secret. He could only conclude it was a flex of the Marquis family's impressive intelligence network. Nearby, Gilbert Benson watched, grumbling to his companion about how much Salim rubbed him the wrong way. He is suddenly addressed by a stern-faced young man who introduces himself as Mark, the third son of the Marquis Sarmiento. Internally, Salim recognizes Mark as one of the few people he got along with at the academy in his previous life. He greets him warmly, remarking that it has been a long time and that they should make the most of their next 3 years together. Mark's expression remains cold. He states that he wishes Salim would come to better understand the church, his tone making Salim falter. Mark internally questions if they could ever be friends again. Turning away, Mark declares that Salim must repent before they can speak again. The reason for his hostility becomes clear to Salim. Mark's uncle is the Archbishop of the capital church, the highest religious authority in the kingdom. House Sarmiento has deep ties to the church, and for them, someone like Salim using healing magic without their sanction is unacceptable. Salim realizes that friendship with him is now impossible. Elsewhere at the party, Gilbert Benson complains loudly about the tedious greetings from the noble families, especially the two marquee houses. His bespectacled friend advises him against such talk, but Gilbert ignores him as Valerie Meldars and another noblewoman rally their group, declaring they must work together to prove their Duke family is superior. An announcement is made at the freshman welcome party, encouraging all attendees, not just nobles, to mingle freely. Salim sighs, observing that while many look elegant, they are from warrior classes with fiery tempers. He feels a weary sense of responsibility to keep them in line. He reflects on his true purpose. He had wanted to greet the summoned hero, who is also present, but an unspoken rule divides the venue between nobility and commoners. Approaching him now would only draw unwanted attention. He recalls the hero who defeated him in his past life and reaffirms his mission to build friendships at the academy to prevent the kingdom's future destruction by demons. His thoughts focus on the two key individuals he must ally with. First, the commoner hero, and second, Nadia Louisver, the daughter of a marquis. He knows that to stand against the coming demon invasion, the kingdom will desperately need the hero's immense battle strength and Nadia's brilliant ability to command. As he stands lost in thought, Lieselot Belcher approaches, observing that he was waiting there. She remarks that he has changed significantly since they last met. Salim struggles to recall when that was, remembering it was last summer. For him, however, an entire lifetime of events has transpired since last fall. Lieselot continues, acknowledging she's heard of his recent activities in the capital. She posits that his outlook has changed because healing magic users tend to have gentle personalities, suggesting his magic influenced his temperament. She offers this as a convenient story to explain his rapid leveling without suspicion, before pointedly adding that a year ago, he came across as nothing more than a good-looking but terrible villain. She continued, her tone now completely shifted to one of dreamy admiration. She confessed that she had always imagined him as a gentle, refined, and soft-spoken noble, a character straight out of storybook. Seeing him again after so long, looking like a hero from a romance novel, had been an unbelievable shock. As her imagination ran wild, Salim could only stare, completely baffled by her words. He was still processing her words when she leaned closer, adding that while the other young ladies from noble houses would surely not leave him alone, she was glad to see this side of him, regardless of its authenticity. Salim's confusion mounted. He wondered if Lieselot had always been like this, a stark contrast to the cool, composed, and mature woman he remembered from his future. He came to a startling conclusion. He had completely misjudged everyone up until now. As if on cue, a group of female students, including Princess Rafaela, gathered nearby, their gazes fixed on him. They whispered among themselves, captivated by his appearance and debating whether to approach him. Their hesitation was short-lived, and soon Salim found himself surrounded by the sudden crowd of girls. This had never happened in his previous life. He realized with a jolt that his school life was destined to be far more chaotic than he had ever imagined. Lieselot gave him a knowing wink, remarking on his popularity. She advised him to take his time, but playfully warned him not to let the other girls snatch him away. The first semester of Salim Bergman's second school life begins. Standing on the training grounds, he resolves to stay focused, determined not to revert to his demonic past. His primary objective is clear: raise his level to 50 to fulfill the main quest and awaken the holy attribute. An instructor's voice cuts through his thoughts, announcing the start of the general swordsman class and ordering everyone to don their armor. He notes that the flow of the lesson is identical to his previous life. As he reflects, his classmate Gilbert Benson explains the rules of the upcoming matches. They are restricted to sword skills only, with no body enhancement magic allowed. Gilbert adds reassuringly that the armor is enchanted, so they don't need to worry about injuries. The instructor asks who is ready for the first match. Immediately, a stern-faced young man named Mark Sarmiento raises his hand, his voice ringing out as he declares his desire to have a match with Salim Bergman. The challenge electrifies the air, catching the other students by surprise. He agrees to the duel, though he can feel the palpable hostility radiating from Mark. He decides this will be a perfect opportunity for proper sword training, recalling his sword teacher Kadia's words about his over-reliance on magic. With the command to begin, the two opponents face each other on the training grounds, swords held at the ready. Their blades meet with a sharp clang. Mark grins with condescension, remarking that Salim can at least block. Salim, however, assesses the situation calmly, judging that their skills are more or less equal at this moment. Mark presses his advantage, relentlessly attacking. Salim strains to defend himself, realizing the severity of his situation. Without body enhancement magic, every one of Mark's heavy blows lands with crushing force. His lighter build puts him at a clear physical disadvantage against his larger opponent. The onslaught is too much. Salim is driven to his knees, defeated. Mark stands victorious over him, and the instructor's voice declares him the winner. He looks up, bewildered by the sheer pride radiating from Mark. He can't understand it. It was only a practice match where magic was forbidden. Nearby, Gilbert shares his confusion, while the other students watch the scene unfold with a mixture of expressions. Gilbert rushes to Salim's side, his face flushed with indignation. He explains that for a noble, winning or losing reflects directly on their honor, which is why it's permissible to have a skilled subordinate fight in one's place. He then passionately declares that if anyone challenges Salim again, he will fight in his place. He passionately argues that they should fight for Salim's victory to demonstrate the strength of House Bergman. Mark Sarmiento counters that while Gilbert is skilled, there is more to be learned from facing strong opponents, even in defeat. Salim observes them, realizing Gilbert's approach is unlikely to succeed. Later, alone, he reflects on the situation. With his friends hyping him up so much, he feels the weight of their expectations and understands he must live up to them. He recalls his previous life, where all that expectation turned into crushing pressure. It was that pressure that ultimately broke him, causing him to nearly lose his mind after his very first duel against the hero. His thoughts return to the present academy, a place where nobles hold all the power and a commoner would barely be noticed. Yet, in his previous future, the hero had a strong presence here. A sudden realization strikes him. He hasn't seen that commoner hero at all this time. The realization crystallizes into a painful truth. The hero only gained attention in the past because he had defeated Salim. This time, however, Salim faced Mark instead. He concludes that this change, this deviation from the timeline, is his own fault. He looks at his friends, internally apologizing. He has decided he must endure another humiliating loss for his plan to work. Gilbert, misreading his expression as resolve, clenches a fist and vows not to lose again. 3 days later, swordsmanship class is set to begin with matches. Mark Sarmiento approaches with a smirk, tauntingly asking Salim how he feels and offering a rematch. Gilbert steps forward, declaring that Salim will accept, but Salim stops him. He apologizes to Gilbert, stating that facing the same opponent again would be a boring lesson. His internal thoughts reveal his true objective. He must challenge the hero. It is imperative to make the hero famous and strong as quickly as possible, because if the demon attacks while the hero is still weak, they will be in grave trouble. He knows losing again will upset his friends, but it's a necessary sacrifice. As he steels himself, a clear voice calls out, asking Prince Bergman for a sparring match. The challenger steps forward, sword in hand. Is crowned Princess Rafaela, her expression focused and serious. He is stunned. An invitation from Princess cannot be refused, nor can he allow Gilbert to take his place. He internally questions the timing of her challenge. Still, he reasons that a loss to the famously powerful princess would be less humiliating than his defeat by Mark. Turning to a worried Gilbert, he dismisses his concerns and accepts the duel. He faced the crown princess, taking in her slight frame. From her build alone, she appeared light, almost fragile, seemingly putting her at a disadvantage. But as he looked at her directly, a sense of unease settled in. His apprehension was justified. The princess exploded into motion, her blade a blur of strikes. He struggled to parry, the force of her assault feeling as if he were being attacked by multiple swords at once. He remembered then. In the future he knew, she had endured his attacks even after he had become a demon. The sheer power behind her advance drove him back, their swords screeching as they locked together in a stalemate. In an instant, she broke the lock, the tip of her blade coming to rest against his throat. "Give up," she commanded calmly. Salim could only stare stunned. He understood now. The princess, known for her strength, was on a whole other level. Her overwhelming skill made her physique completely irrelevant. She was, without a doubt, the most battle-hardened warrior he had ever faced. 1 week later, a training session on offensive magic begins. A part-time instructor named Stein presents a set of special armor developed by the Magic Research Institute. He explains that it's a magical tool designed to automatically neutralize incoming pellets, making it perfectly safe for all-out mock battles. The other students are impressed. Gilbert Benson remarks to Salim that since his future is on the line, this is the perfect opportunity to display his true magical capabilities, noting that Stein was once Salim's private tutor. Stein approaches Salim directly, acknowledging that it has been a while. He recalls that back in the territory, Salim often slacked off during his magic training. The instructor warns him that the First Royal Academy of Magic is the greatest in the land, and that he must take his studies seriously or risk falling behind. His passive-aggressive tone grates on Salim. He remembers that in his previous life, he had to cut Stein's classes with his father's permission because the training sessions were far too long. Back then, he had seen it as dedication, but now, something feels different. As he reflects, the matches begin. Valerie Meldars announces that opponents were chosen by lottery and takes her position. Facing the second son of a count, she confidently casts a fireball spell. The spell strikes her armor and dissipates harmlessly. Valerie gasps in amazement at the equipment's incredible effectiveness, while Gilbert and Salim watch the demonstration from the sidelines. Meanwhile, in another match, Nadia Louisver unleashes a furious magical assault against Princess Rafaela, tauntingly asking how she likes it. The barrage impacts Rafaela's armor and vanishes completely. She stands entirely unfazed. Nadia laughs, remarking that it is just as she expected from the princess. Watching from afar, Salim thinks to himself that since it's a training match between skilled fighters, there shouldn't be any problem. He then recalls a dark memory. In the previous timeline, he caused a terrible incident with this very same magical equipment. The memory floods back. After losing the duel to the hero, he had become obsessed, determined to prove he was superior when it came to magic. He vowed not to be looked down on and unleashed a powerful ice bullet spell to show them what he could really do. The resulting blast was devastating, and the other students cried out in horror for medical help. He remembers his shock and confusion. Stein had said it was safe to go all out. Trusting those words, he had cast a spell at full power, without considering his opponent's actual skill. As a result, he left the boy with a serious injury, one bad enough to cause permanent damage. He grimaced, recalling his past failure. It was his own weakness that led him to panic and say something awful, resulting in the hero challenging and utterly defeating him. The memory was a total trauma. This time, he resolved he would not mess up. He would take it slow, carefully considering his opponent. Focusing his mana, he began to form an ice bullet. His opponent, Gilbert, watched the display of magic with wide, panicked eyes. The armor provided by Instructor Stein was meant to block magic of this level, but it was known to be ineffective against serious spells cast by high-ranking nobles with powerful mana reserves. He found the reaction amusing, letting out a small laugh. He encouraged Gilbert to train with something truly powerful. Internally, however, he decided to hold back but keep a close watch on things, just in case. His caution was immediately justified. Gilbert turned his attention to Mark, a manic grin spreading across his face. He declared that if he didn't mess this up, perhaps Mark would be the one to look like the villain. And with a wild cry, he unleashed a powerful earth cannon spell. As the spell hurtled towards its target, Salim moved in an instant, positioning himself in front of Mark and erecting a magical barrier. He calmly advised Prince Mark to hold back, warning him that the armor was not invincible. His intervention was met with Gilbert's immediate anger. Gilbert demanded that Salim not interfere, claiming he was merely showing Mark a powerful spell. Salim retorted sharply, questioning Gilbert's reasoning. He explained that the magical gear couldn't fully block spells from high-ranking nobles and that a direct hit could have caused a serious accident. Sighing, he realized Gilbert wouldn't believe how fragile the armor was unless he saw it for himself. He then proposed to settle his old sword duel with Mark right now. This suggestion was interrupted by Gilbert, who laughed, accusing Salim of trying to break up the match. Salim clarified he was only trying to prevent accidents. Gilbert accepted the challenge, vowing to fight Salim and break his armor before anyone else got hurt. Gilbert confidently granted him the first move. Determined to demonstrate the armor's weakness, Salim unleashed his ice bullet. He calculated the shot carefully, ensuring the power would just barely avoid striking any vital spots. The spell struck, shattering the armor plating. Gilbert stared in shock. Salim pointed to the damage, stating the armor could no longer break down magic. Instructor Stein immediately interjected, blaming Salim and claiming this was the result of him skipping training. A surge of anger went through Salim as he wondered how his past self could have ever trusted armor made by such a man, lamenting his poor judgment of character. Despite the proof, Gilbert began to laugh. He mused that being cautious had its uses, recalling the cruel and cold-blooded people he'd seen. Then, his expression twisted into one of manic glee. He declared that simply hurting Salim wasn't enough to convince him of the danger, and that he had no intention of stopping. He began charging another earth cannon as Salim watched, realizing his opponent was completely undeterred. He unleashes his spell, Ice Cutter, directly at Mark Sarmiento's armor. Simultaneously, he erects a barrier to protect Mark from the full force of the blow, apologizing and telling him to bear with it for a moment. The sudden appearance of the barrier spell surprises Valerie. The spell inflicts a minor cut, but Salim's shock isn't from the pain. A notification appears in his vision. He has intentionally hurt someone, resulting in a deduction of 1,000 experience points. He dismisses the physical wound, thinking that anyone from a Marquis family could easily heal such a superficial injury with basic body enhancement. His opponent, Gilbert, cheers wildly, declaring that Salim gave Sarmiento what he deserved. Salim, however, is horrified. He realizes with a sinking feeling that he has just repeated the actions of his previous future, hurting someone and talking down to them. He worries that at this rate, he will be hated all over again. He rationalizes the situation, noting that the other students likely see it as simple retaliation, especially since Mark had insulted him during the last swordsmanship class. For nobles whose honor is tied to victory, this is a natural act. He concludes that his aides, particularly Gilbert, are simply hot-blooded. His thoughts then turn to the instructor. Salim confronts Sir Stein, gesturing to the shattered armor. He states that he is honestly offended that the instructor believed such equipment could protect against the magical power of a high-ranking noble. Stein stammers, insisting the durability tests were solid. Salim counters that while the armor is useless for them, it could serve as insurance for low-ranking nobles or commoners. He suggests that from now on, the students who witness the failure should be allowed to borrow it, so they won't overestimate magical tools and cause accidents. Having made his point, he turns to leave. He anticipates that after seeing his aggressive display, the hero would challenge him to a duel. However, looking back, he sees his classmates are calm. He realizes his assumption was wrong. There will be no challenge today. His friends approach him. Gilbert notes that unlike the old future where Salim would beat up a commoner, this was a proper fight between nobles with a history. Mark agrees, adding that since no one was seriously hurt, the outcome is good enough. He listens to them, but his attention is captured by another system message. It informs him that because he acted for others despite suffering a loss, he has gained 100 experience points. The unexpected twist leaves him stunned. He internally questions the system's logic, wondering why it would praise him after taking away so much experience just moments before. At the academy in the capital, Gilbert Benson enthusiastically praises Salim Bergman. He declares that ever since Salim defeated Mark Sarmiento, everyone has been talking about his amazing magic. Gilbert suggests that with people finally recognizing his true power, things must be going well for him. Salim, however, seems to ponder if that is truly the case. He internally refutes the idea. Things are not going well. It had already been 3 weeks since the term started, and a critical problem had emerged. No one was paying any attention to the hero. He recalls his previous life, where the hero had swiftly become the center of attention at the academy precisely because he had managed to defeat Salim. But this time, that pivotal event never happened. He sips his drink, contemplating the dire implications. If no one notices the hero now, it would be seriously bad news. He knew that at this institution, students who were not part of a faction only received a basic education. The advanced magic passed down through noble families was only taught to those with the right connections. His thoughts continue, solidifying his concern. The hero needed to get noticed and join a solid faction soon. He wouldn't grow stronger unless he was in an environment that matched his talent, and they would need him at his peak if they were to have any chance of standing up to the demons later on. He weighs his options. The hero was from the royal capital, so under normal circumstances, he would have been part of the princess's faction. But since he was being ignored, he was left alone. Salim wonders if he should just approach him directly. The young noble quickly dismisses the idea. Given the hero's personality and his ingrained tendency to obey nobles without question, a sudden approach would likely be ignored. Just then, Gilbert asks if something is wrong, inviting him for a walk in the garden. Mark agrees, noting they still have time before after-school training. As they walked, Salim reflects on how differently these two treat him now compared to his previous life. Back then, their overly polite behavior had annoyed him. Now, he finds he doesn't mind their casual, sometimes brash, manner at all. He concludes that a direct approach won't work. He needs a proper reason to talk to the hero. Their conversation is cut short by a sudden commotion. The sounds of a struggle echo from the nearby courtyard, drawing their attention. There, they see a group of students ganging up on the hero. Gilbert remarks that it's a group beatdown. Salim assesses the situation. While the hero might be beatable one-on-one, this is different. He realizes this is the opportunity he was looking for. The attackers grow frustrated as the hero dodges all their strikes. One prepares to cast magic on all of them at once, an act Salim deems too excessive. Deciding to intervene, he calls out, "Hey, you guys!" He watched, momentarily stunned, as the hero dealt with the situation himself. With a powerful gesture, the hero unleashed a torrent of wind magic, blasting his assailants back with a sharp gust. The hero stood impassively over the defeated students. Salim, caught in the magical backlash, found himself on the ground, feigning distress as the hero turned his intense gaze upon him. His feigned panic instantly melted away into a dazzling, cheerful smile. He laughed and exclaimed that the display was amazing, praising the hero for taking down all the attackers on his own. The hero could only stare, completely bewildered by the sudden shift in demeanor. He sprang to his feet, deciding that a friendly approach was the correct move. He boldly requested a spar, promising a reward if the hero could defeat him. This entire performance was part of a calculated effort to build a connection, no matter what it took. Nearby, Gilbert watched in utter shock at Salim's uncharacteristic behavior. The hero, however, was not swayed. He flatly refused, stating he wasn't interested. Gilbert rushed forward, shouting that this was Prince Salim, the eldest son of Duke Bergman, and that the hero was being rude. He warned that this kind of name-dropping was exactly what the hero hated. Upon hearing the full name, the hero's expression changed. He looked at Salim with sudden recognition and asked if he was the one who had treated the people with food poisoning 3 weeks ago. The question caught Salim by surprise, who wondered how he could possibly know that. The hero recalled what he had heard from the villagers. They had spoken of the prince of the Bergman family, describing him as a character straight out of a popular novel. He then revealed the connection. The people Salim had healed were his childhood friends. The realization dawned on Salim. This was an unexpected but welcome development. With a newfound respect, the hero declared that he owed Salim a debt and formally accepted the offer to spar. Internally, Salim celebrated. His meticulous plan, the Seeker's Path, had finally paid off. He then turned to Gilbert and the others, apologizing but firmly stating that this section of the training ground was reserved for the Bergman family. Placing a hand on the hero's back, he instructed everyone else to clear the area so their spar could begin. He formally introduces himself as Salim Bergman. In response, the dark-haired youth states his name is simply Leo, explaining that he grew up in an orphanage and thus has no family name. Leo then asks if he should address him as Prince Salim, but Salim dismisses the formality, telling him to begin. He sets the terms. There are no special rules, and both magic and sword are permitted. As they prepare, Salim has a stark realization. This is the hero who defeated him in his past life, after he became the Demon Lord. The duel commences instantly, their blades clashing within a glowing magical circle. As sparks fly from the impact, Salim internally remarks on the strange sensation of facing the very person who brought about his end in a previous life. Leo presses his attack, but Salim calmly sidesteps, allowing his opponent to strike freely as if it were nothing. The watching students murmur in awe at Salim's display of confidence. He acknowledges to himself that the hero is truly strong. This confidence in their spar, he realizes, stems from mutual trust. Neither will make a mistake that would result in a fatal wound, allowing them to fight with faith in each other's skill. As Leo lunges, Salim coolly assesses his advantage. He is facing the hero at age 15, before he became renowned, whereas Salim retains the memories and experience of training until he was 17. With this upper hand, he unleashes a blast of magic, crying out, "Ice Bullet!" His spell demonstrates his power. With a confident smile, Salim encourages Leo not to hold back, reminding him of the powerful wind magic he used in the courtyard. He tells Leo he has already seen what he is capable of, prompting a look of renewed determination from the hero. In response, Leo unleashes a massive vortex of wind. Salim stands firm, ready for the onslaught. This is precisely his plan, to let Leo showcase his flashy spells and techniques so everyone can witness his incredible talent. The crowd watches, stunned and amazed. The moment the duel concludes, Gilbert Benson rushes to Leo's side, buzzing with excitement. He declares Leo's strength to be insane and immediately begins a recruitment pitch, noting that as an unaffiliated commoner, he could be a huge asset. Mark Sarmiento adds that securing Leo would ensure victory in academy competitions and strengthen the Duke's family's military power. As Gilbert continues, Salim steps in to apologize to Leo for his friend's forwardness. He internally reflects that this is how nobles typically react to strong talent. They underestimate Leo as a commoner, but also recognize his value. He knows any faction, including the royal family, would promise him good treatment to secure his allegiance. He steps in to mediate, telling the other nobles not to be so persistent with their recruitment. Leo, looking somewhat overwhelmed, confirms that he has no intention of leaving his homeland and doesn't want to cause trouble. The other students relent. With that settled, he turns to Leo, suggesting they train together after class. He explains that while Leo's attacks are strong, they are too straightforward and easily defended against. To demonstrate a more advanced technique, he combines the wind magic Leo used earlier with fire magic, causing flames and air to swirl violently around his hands. The vortex of elemental energy erupts with controlled power. With a confident smile, he asks Leo if he wants to try it, promising that this kind of training will make him significantly stronger. Taking up the challenge, he focuses his own mana, successfully replicating the technique. A swirling torrent of combined magic begins to form in his hands, his expression one of intense concentration. Watching him succeed so quickly, Salim reflects internally. He recalls how, before the timeline reset, he lost himself after witnessing this very talent. Now his feelings have changed. His only desire is to have that immense power on his side. As they walk together later, he tells Leo that he has the basics down, but that this isn't the end of the road. He then reveals a crucial fact from his previous life. The hero had an incredible and troublesome ability to copy the magic of others. He explains that powerful magics, like the Bergman family's barrier, are vital for protecting the kingdom and have been developed by noble houses over generations. While Leo's ability to use these spells would be a great asset, Salim warns him that nobles care deeply about etiquette. It is polite to formally request permission before using another family's signature magic. Leo finds the idea of such formalities to be a pain. To simplify the process, he assures Leo that all he needs to do is send a letter, and someone can even write it for him if the format is too complex. He immediately turns to Valerie and asks her to write a letter to the Cole family on Leo's behalf, and she readily agrees. He continues his lesson, explaining that the Magic Academy is filled with nobles, and that life there is difficult without understanding its many unwritten rules. He reminds Leo of the recruitment incident in the courtyard, then reveals that in the previous timeline, Leo was constantly accused of being rude, when in reality, the fault lay with the royal family. At that moment, his friends, Gilbert, Valerie, Mark, and Nadia, all step forward, assuring Leo they understand the situation and are counting on him. They offer their full support, telling him to ask for help with anything he needs. Surrounded by this unexpected alliance, Leo is momentarily speechless before quietly offering his thanks. As Leo stood surrounded by his new allies, a notification materialized in Salim's vision. It confirmed he had helped an isolated classmate, rewarding him with 200 experience points. Salim looked on, satisfied, hoping this would help them grow closer. A sudden realization struck him as he reflected on his past life. Losing to the hero had wounded his pride, but perhaps the hero had also struggled, trapped in an academy of nobles. It felt as if he was seeing a new side to his former adversary for the first time. His thoughts were interrupted by the system's specific wording. He wondered aloud in his mind if the hero was officially labeled a loner by the system, just as a final message appeared. New teammate unlocked. Several days after Leo began his training with the Bergman house, Salim's peers watched from a distance. Valerie Meldar's remarks that it's unusual for a 15-year-old to be so suddenly appointed as a noble. Gilbert Benson points out that Leo is the same age as Selim. Their bespectacled companion clarifies that as a commoner, Leo is not well-versed in noble society, leading to his isolation. He suggests they simply watch over him for now. Elsewhere, Duke Bergman and Nadia Louisver also observe the training. The Duke is confident that Leo will be of great service to the kingdom and is determined to see him grow stronger. Nadia agrees, noting Leo's rapid progress and acknowledging that the hero's full power will be essential if they are to stand a chance against the demons in the future. Selim, overhearing their intense expectations, grows concerned. He worries internally that if they push Leo too hard, he might stop training altogether, which would be a terrible outcome. He quickly dismisses the thought, assuring himself that he isn't slacking on his duty to recruit talent. His bespectacled friend, startled by Selim's sudden change in demeanor, hastily agrees with him. Flustered, he affirms that they will keep an eye on Leo and give him space as suggested, then quickly changes the subject by announcing it's almost time and asking if the carriage is ready. Later, as they walk through a corridor, Selim confirms he is studying outside the academy again. He explains his desire to continue learning about pharmacology, revealing that Amanda, who helped care for the estate, wrote him a letter of introduction to the royal apothecary. His companions are intrigued. Gilbert finds the subject of pharmacology unfamiliar, as they typically rely on magic for healing. The other young noble, however, expresses admiration for Selim's thirst for knowledge. Selim mentions he asked Valerie to arrange the carriage, but invites one of them to join him. Gilbert immediately volunteers, proclaiming himself Selim's right-hand man and the most suitable person for errands outside the academy. The enthusiastic offer makes him pause. A memory surfaces of his past life, where he was always surrounded by a large group of aides who seemed to resent his presence. The contrast between then and now is stark. He is brought back to the present as his friends press the issue, suggesting he bring more people along to give others a chance. Selim dismisses the idea, reasoning that arriving at a commoner's home with a large entourage would be a nuisance. He decides to reconsider it another time. As they near their destination, a frantic cry for help echoes from the direction of the carriage lot. Gilbert and his companion turn towards the sound, sensing trouble. Selim halts, his expression grim. He reflects on the nature of the prestigious First Magic Academy. While conflict between nobles are often ignored, there are always those who act cruelly when a clear gap in status or ability exists. A bitter thought for him, the one who once became a demon and nearly destroyed the very country he now inhabits. He rushes toward the commotion, finding two male students cornering a young woman. As one of the bullies demands she hurry and bring something called a surani, Selim's voice cuts through the air, demanding to know what they are doing. He observes with cold satisfaction that they are fleeing in a panic. In response to their flight, he raises a hand, a magic circle materializing before him. He considers that even if they are random attackers, the Academy's system would likely penalize him for excessive force. Deciding that simply freezing the ground would suffice, he tells them they should be thankful as ice spreads out, immobilizing their carriage. The commotion draws the attention of his companions. The bespectacled young man, seeing the frozen carriage, asks what is going on before quickly instructing Valerie to summon the Academy staff to handle the troublemakers. She agrees at once. With the immediate threat neutralized, he turns his focus to the young woman they were harassing. Gently taking her hand, he quietly asks if she is all right. She looks up at him, her eyes wide and welling with tears. A fresh scratch marks her cheek, a clear sign of the bully's aggression. Gilbert, seeing her up close, suddenly flushes, recognizing her as Laura Panetti. The name registers with Selim as well. Gilbert internally laments that sending Valerie to fetch the staff was a mistake, realizing the situation might be more delicate than it first appeared. He rushes forward, anxiously asking Selim if he is safe and what happened to the girl. Selim advises him to calm down, observing that Laura is in no condition to speak at the moment. As Selim contemplates their next move, a man in formal attire rushes toward them. He identifies himself as a member of the young woman's household and anxiously asks what has happened and if his lady is all right. The attendant's arrival seems to steady her. She explains that she is Laura, the granddaughter of Baronet Panetti, and that her family had come to collect her. Unable to locate her in the expansive parking area, they had left the carriage to search on foot. Gilbert listens intently as she clarifies the social dynamics of the academy. Only the highest-ranking nobles may park near the entrance. Families of lower status, like the Panetti, are relegated to more distant, less populated areas, making them easy targets. Incensed by the injustice, Gilbert declares that they cannot simply leave her and resolves that they must escort her home safely. His friend's passionate declaration solidified Selim's resolve. He recalled Laura Panetti from his previous life. Even then, she was isolated and bullied, a target for nobles who preyed on the weak. Agreeing with Gilbert, Selim turned to her attendant, instructing the man to guide them and to contact Valerie, the healer. He remembered trying to help her before the reset, an unusual act for his former self. It was clear that Gilbert had taken an immediate liking to her. This loyalty was characteristic of Gilbert, who had remained a cheerful and supportive subordinate even after Selim's reputation was ruined in that old future. Understanding his friend's feelings, Selim had chosen to stand behind Laura, leading them to this moment. Their journey concluded before an imposing mansion. Salim stared, surprised, as he hadn't realized Laura's family possessed such a large house. Having never looked into her situation before, he questioned whether a mere merchant could afford such an estate. He reasoned that the baronet title must have been earned through a significant, lasting achievement, meaning there was more to the Panetti family story. Inside, Salim listened as Laura's father spoke. The man confessed that sending their beautiful daughter, with only the rank of baronet, to an academy filled with arrogant nobles and without a protector was a reckless decision. He admitted that allowing a defenseless girl to mingle among them was nothing but foolishness. As his wife wept, the man explained their predicament. Her grandfather had been insistent on her getting into the first academy. To prevent any trouble, they had asked the Marquis of Durrani to place Laura among the lower-ranking attendants serving the princess, hoping it would offer some protection. The plan, however, had failed. He recounted how Lady Gelsamina, the Marquis's daughter, ignored Laura the moment she saw her at the academy. From that point on, his daughter had been left completely alone. He added that the Bergman family had also requested the Marquis act as an intermediary with the princess, and that Gelsamina had appeared friendly during the entrance ceremony. As Salim listened, he recalled from his past life that the Marquis's daughter possessed a two-faced personality. The realization settled heavily upon him. This situation was identical to the one surrounding the hero, Leo. Princess Rafaela's entire social circle was a complete mess. He considered the political landscape. As the crown princess, Rafaela should have the most secure environment possible. Yet, it seemed the current king was intentionally raising her to be strong but isolated, with no intention of handing over real power. The princess, born when the king was only 18, was being turned into a puppet, forced to spend her days fighting. Back in the sitting room, Laura's mother pleaded with her husband. She argued that it was too risky to keep their daughter at the academy and that they should just expel her. Her husband, however, looked down in thought, murmuring that they shouldn't be so quick to make such a decision. He explained to his wife that every noble family was fighting for the chance to have their child enroll alongside the princess. Wasting such a valuable spot, he feared, would only earn them the resentment of the others. The weight of this problem settled on Salim. He recognized the situation's delicacy and resolved to discuss it with his closest aides immediately. He gathered his companions, instructing them all to keep an eye on Laura Panetti. Gilbert reacted with immediate passion, declaring it a terrible situation and insisting they must do whatever it takes to help her. Salim, however, remained grim, recalling his memories from the previous timeline and thinking to himself that Gilbert's passion would not be enough later on. His hesitation in telling Laura's parents everything stemmed from his secret knowledge. He remembered how, in the past, his public declaration to protect Laura had stopped the overt bullying from male students, but he had been powerless against the more insidious torment that followed. He recalled the political complexities. Supporting Leo, a man of overwhelming talent, was a natural and unquestioned move for a noble seeking to gather strong allies. Laura, on the other hand, was a beautiful but low-ranking girl with no particular abilities. To favor her would invite dangerous speculation, and so his half-hearted sympathy had only made things worse. Whispers spread among the other students, accusing Laura of being a nuisance who was seducing the Duke's son to marry into a higher station. These disgraceful rumors, born from the resentment of the other nobles, became unbearable. In the end, Laura couldn't take it anymore and dropped out of the academy. The memory of the aftermath was still clear. Gilbert had tried to find out how she was doing, only to learn she had moved to the countryside with her family. That incident created an awkward rift between Salim and Gilbert, one of the few who had always treated him with warmth. Returning his focus to the present, Salim acknowledged his past carelessness. He understood that such problems couldn't be solved by men alone. He needed a female ally. His current aides were all men from families without noble titles, not strong enough to act as a shield for Laura. His gaze fell upon Lieselot. He asked for her opinion, but she seemed dismissive, questioning why he would ask her and suggesting he should just state his intentions directly. She scoffed at the notion, mocking the idea of a simple, possessive declaration like, "Laura is mine. Touch her and you'll answer to me," as if such a thing could magically solve the entire problem. Gilbert stared, shocked by her bluntness, while Salim considered her words. Salim rejected her romanticized notion outright. He explained that he had no intention of claiming Laura as his own, as such a careless statement, even if meant with good intentions, could ruin her life. That kind of approach would only escalate the bullying. Furthermore, as a saint candidate bound by the Seeker's system, having a mistress was unthinkable for him. His serious reasoning did little to deter her. Lieselot sighed, lost in her fantasy, musing how romantic it would be if their situation were a story. A handsome noble helping a beautiful girl in distress, a forbidden romance across class lines. She dismissed his concern that such things only turn into messy relationships in real life. She then covered her face theatrically, wailing for him not to call it messy and pleading for him not to use such words. He watched her antics, a stark contrast to the composed woman he remembered from the previous future. He knew this was a life-altering matter for the person involved, and that, out of all his retainers, Lieselot was the most dependable this time. He would have to speak to her patiently to get her help. To break through her fantasy, he grasped her firmly by the shoulders, his expression hardening. "Lisa Lot," he said, his voice low and intense. "Please take this seriously." He leaned in closer, applying pressure. He told her he was counting on her and wouldn't let go until she came up with a plan. The sudden proximity made Lisa Lot's heart race. She thought to herself that this was bad, that being this close to her handsome lord was overwhelming. Flustered, she finally relented. She clarified that it wasn't about him solving the problem, but that there was a perfect female boss in her grade who could handle it. Still holding her close, Salim demanded she explain in detail. He questioned the term female boss, prompting her to specify that she meant a woman with a commanding presence. She identified this person as the daughter of the Marquis of Louisver. The name struck a chord with Salim. Nadia Louisver. He recalled that in the previous future, she had fought demons until the very end, saving civilians. He agreed that if he asked her directly, she likely wouldn't refuse. Realizing that one of his past failures was trying to handle things himself, he saw the wisdom in relying on someone trustworthy. He turned to Valerie and ordered her to arrange a meeting with the Marquis's daughter after school the next day. With the plan set, Lisa Lot's expression shifted. She thought to herself that a sudden meeting with an important person had been arranged. She admitted internally that the Marquis of Louisver's daughter was rather intimidating, and she wasn't entirely comfortable with her. She continues her thought, her expression softening slightly. Despite her reservations, she concedes that since the matter involves helping someone, she will cooperate. Salim listens, his gaze steady and focused on her. He arrives at a grand, imposing mansion under the night sky, the meeting place now before him. A flicker of apprehension crosses his mind as he considers the formidable woman he is about to meet. He can only hope she won't treat him too harshly, though a seed of doubt remains. The success of this crucial meeting hangs in the balance. In the opulent Louisver family lounge, Prince Salim, accompanied by Gilbert and Valerie, sits opposite a group of young women. An attendant stands watch as tea is served, the atmosphere thick with formal tension. The group's leader, Nadia Louisver, daughter of the Marquis, formally greets the prince. Her companions, Pamela Sati and Julietta Genet, are also introduced. Nadia then gets straight to the point, asking Salim what brings him to her family's estate. He feels a wave of unease, internally noting that the Marquis of Louisver's faction is composed mostly of women. The fancy, perfumed room feels more intimidating than welcoming. Across from him, Nadia smiles knowingly, remarking that she has heard things about him. Her companions observe him with keen interest. Beside Salim, Valerie speaks up, stating that she has already figured out the purpose of their visit simply by observing who he chose to bring with him. He then addresses Nadia directly, acknowledging her quick perception. He explains the dire situation of a girl named Laura Panetti, who is completely alone at the academy. Salim worries that if he tries to help her directly, it will be misinterpreted and only make her circumstances worse. He concludes his plea, formally asking for Lady Louisver's assistance. In response, she smiles warmly, remarking that he is truly as kind as the rumors suggest, causing him to react with a slight, flustered chuckle. Her smile prompts an internal reflection. He thinks about how she always praises him whenever they meet, a change he attributes to his recent good behavior guided by the seeker system. He recalls that even in his past, when he was a mess, she treated him with the same kindness. He continues to ponder her behavior, remembering how she always managed to find something nice to say. But now, looking back, he realizes it was a calculated politeness, a way to maintain her distance. The realization dawns on him. She is actually quite scary. As his thoughts conclude, Nadia's calm voice cuts through the silence. With a knowing look, she confirms she was already aware of his purpose, stating, "I knew it. This must be about Laura Panetti." The previous night's events had already begun to spread like wildfire through the academy. In a common room, Julietta Genet burst through the doors, shouting for everyone's attention with what she proclaimed was big news. She breathlessly announced that Prince Salim had apparently helped Laura Panetti. The other students reacted with a mixture of shock and excitement, demanding to know what happened. Julietta explained that Laura was about to be attacked by some male students when Salim intervened, taking them down with magic. The gossip immediately turned to how perfectly the handsome prince and the pretty baroness's granddaughter matched, with some students swooning as if they were witnessing a real-life romance novel. This romanticized version of events reached another group of students nearby. Lisa Lot Belcher, flustered, apologized and asked her friends to forget what she had just said. Nadia Louisver, however, simply smiled, noting that Lisa Lot's reaction was tantamount to an admission. Her thoughts drifted to the source of all the comparisons. She knew of a popular novel circulating in the capital about a romance between a nobleman and a common girl. It was widely gossiped that the noble character looked just like Prince Salim. Furthermore, she was aware of another rumor, that she herself resembled the villainous rival in the story. It was amidst all this talk that a request for a meeting had arrived from the prince. Now, sitting across from him during that very meeting, she questioned the comparison aloud. She pointed out the absurdity of it, stating that since both she and the prince were heirs to their families' houses, there was no possibility they would ever be engaged like the characters in the story. Her expression hardened as she accused him of being a sly fox. She laid out her theory. He had skillfully maneuvered the talented commoner, Leo, to her side, while simultaneously dumping the less capable girl onto himself. With a smirk, she decided to poke back, just to blow off some steam. He processed her words, internally admitting that she was a handful, the kind of noble he was never good at dealing with. Despite this, he recalled from his past life that Nadia Louisver was fundamentally a pure-hearted person, one destined to save many lives. He quickly clarified his position, stating that he only meant she was hard to deal with from a man's perspective. Nadia seemed to accept this, but then pointed out that she hadn't actually succeeded in recruiting Leo yet. She smiled slyly, suggesting that if Salim was so interested, he could try talking to Leo himself. He considered her offer, but his knowledge of what was to come solidified his resolve. In the future, he remembered, Leo worked alongside Lady Louisver to protect the people. He was confident she would be able to guide Leo well. With a resigned sigh, he finally relented. He couldn't just ignore a student who was struggling. He agreed to take Laura Panetti under his wing. Across the room, Nadia and her companions laughed, clearly amused by his capitulation. He looked up in surprise as Nadia, a sly smile on her face, stated that since she was going out of her way to grant his request, it would only be fair to expect something in return. He stammered, trying to explain his limitations, but she laughed it off, telling him there was no need to be so cautious. Her proposal was simple. She wanted him to team up with her for the upcoming Inter-Academy matches, a monthly event held at the school. The intensity of her suggestion left him thinking she was terrifying. His mind raced, processing the implications. The matches were, as he knew, a chance for noble families to display their power. He voiced his concern, wondering aloud if a team-up between them wouldn't be overwhelmingly strong. She dismissed his concern with a fiery declaration of her true intent. Their strength was precisely the point. She proclaimed they would crush the pride of the royal family's precious princess, show them the true terror of the regional nobility, and ensure the spoiled royal would never forget the lesson. Her passionate outburst left him flustered. He considered the political landscape, how regional lords like the houses of Bergman and Louisver served the crown yet maintained their independence. He had briefly pictured the princess in tears, but quickly dismissed the thought, doubting she would be so easily broken. After a moment of contemplation, he came to a decision. He admitted that, honestly, he also wished to humble the royal faction. With his resolve firm, he agreed to her proposal, stating they would work together. With their alliance forged, he suggested they drop the formalities, asking her to call him Salim. She readily agreed, noting that being called Lady Louisver felt too stiff now that they were allies, and requested he call her Nadia. She smiled, expressing her delight at the prospect of working with him. She then turned his attention to her companions, introducing them as part of their circle. She first presented the daughter of Count Sati, who waved enthusiastically. Next, she indicated the daughter of Viscount Gina. The two young women then introduced themselves personally. The energetic one with the bow was Pamela, while the composed one with glasses was Julieta. Both politely expressed their pleasure in meeting him. He returned the pleasantries, acknowledging Pamela and Julieta. A thought crossed his mind. He had never been on a first-name basis with girls from other noble houses before. His brief, thoughtful silence prompted one of them to ask if something was amiss. He is immediately put on the spot when Pamela Sati bluntly asks why he rarely smiles. As Julieta, Gina wonders if this is true. Nadia Louisver quickly apologizes for her friend's forwardness. Internally, Salim realizes he has forgotten the proper manners for interacting with women, having spent most of his time with men. This realization prompts him to reflect on his upbringing. While he was taught social etiquette as a duke's heir, he lacked practical experience. He recalls being careful in his dealings with Leo, but acknowledges this situation is different. Concluding that he must act with the proper manners of a noble, he apologizes and asks to try again. With newfound resolve, he adopts a perfect, charming smile. Placing a hand over his heart in a gesture of sincerity, he formally declares that he looks forward to working with them all from now on. The effect is immediate and overwhelming. Nadia, Pamela, Julieta, and even the nearby Lieselot and Princess Rafaela are left momentarily speechless, their faces flushing as they are captivated by his princely display. He observes their flustered reactions with a touch of satisfaction. He realizes that being the object of such admiration is not an unpleasant feeling at all. In fact, it's quite dreamy. His moment of self-satisfaction is abruptly shattered. A notification flashes in his mind. You had impure thoughts. EXP has decreased. 10 EXP points deducted. He stares in disbelief. The shock gives way to frantic confusion. Impure thoughts? He silently screams, unable to comprehend the system's judgment. He internally curses the unfairness of the system, wishing he could freeze it solid. He desperately backpedals in his mind, pleading that he was only joking and that the points shouldn't be deducted, but it's too late. He realizes with dawning horror that even thinking about such things is apparently forbidden. His silent turmoil draws confused glances from Lieselot and Gilbert. Nearby, Gilbert Benson remarks on Salim's uncharacteristic quietness, then turns to Lieselot, pointing out that she was so intense she didn't even touch the snacks. Lieselot lets out an exhausted sigh, admitting she's completely worn out. She reflects on Nadia Louisver's bluntness, concluding that Nadia was likely testing her, watching to see how she would react. Her attention then shifts to Salim. What about you? She asks. Were you scared? He turns to face her, his expression placid, and calmly inquires what she means. A faint blush colors Lieselot's cheeks as she looks away, quietly murmuring that it was nothing. Outside the academy, Gilbert Benson calls out to his companions. asking if they are prepared for the upcoming inter-academy matches. Mark Sarmiento confirms he is, more or less. Their other friend chides Gilbert for asking about information he might leak to another house, but Gilbert laughs it off, encouraging everyone to simply do their best. Nearby, a group of young, noble women affectionately call out to Laura Panetti. Her companions remark on how cute she is, expressing their gladness that she has made genuine friends. One adds that they were happy to help her get away from some annoying people. At that moment, a male student approaches Laura, getting uncomfortably close as he retrieves something from the ground for her. Gilbert and his friends watch from a distance, their faces contorting in anger. Gilbert demands to know who the boy is, while Mark furiously wonders if he dropped the item on purpose, declaring his actions unforgivable. The student chuckles, but a cold feeling washes over Laura. She turns away as he speaks, quickly hurrying away from the unpleasant encounter while her distant admirers grit their teeth. As she moves away, her gaze lands on Salim Bergman walking past. Her troubled expression immediately softens into a warm, gentle smile as she and her friends watch him go by. Observing her reaction, Gilbert notes how happy Laura looked just then. Mark agrees, admitting he feels no jealousy toward Salim, their leader. Their companion adds that the difference between them and Salim is simply too vast. He continues, finding it comforting that a calculating noble like Salim would never make a move on Laura at this juncture. He recalls how well Salim handled the situation when he saved her before. The memory of that selfless act of kindness is recalled. At first, it seemed there was no benefit for Salim. Instead of taking credit, he bowed his head to a female-led house and entrusted Laura to their care, a clear sign of his genuine desire to help. This beautiful gesture won him the admiration of most of the girls at the academy. Mark elaborates on the point, praising their boss for not being swayed by short-term temptations. He explains that while commoners like Leo are strong, they are hard to manage and often clash with nobles. In contrast, Salim handles such dynamics perfectly, avoiding the infighting that would normally erupt over a newly scouted town. As Mark finishes his thought, Gilbert's eyes widen in comprehension. He realizes Salim possesses immense patience, calmly building his talent at his own pace. This, Gilbert concludes, makes him the real deal, a truly significant figure. Mark continues his explanation, noting that Salim's method isn't forceful. He is raising Leo slowly and carefully. This subtle approach has ensured that the arrogant, high-ranking nobles who neglect their intelligence gathering have completely overlooked Leo's true potential. This revelation prompts Mark to recall a personal experience with a frustrated sigh. He recounts how, just the other day, he received praise for his sword skills, praise that even surpassed that of his own master. Instead of approval, however, Salim had given him a piercing, killer glare. With a groan, Mark realizes that this, too, was part of Salim's unique and demanding form of guidance. Before the Grand Academy building, the inter-academy matches finally begin. Gilbert Benson, brimming with excitement, turns to his teammate. "Let's do this, Salim-sama." As he speaks, Nadia Louisver approaches their group, flanked by her own companions. She reminds them that they're a joint team of the Bergman and Louisver houses. With a confident, almost predatory smile, she declares their purpose: to work together as allies and show the princess the true power of the regional nobility. Her intense presence makes Gilbert tense up, and he can only manage a stammered agreement. The teams line up for the 6-on-6 battle. Watching Nadia from behind, Salim internally reflects that she is as scary as ever and someone he would definitely not want as an enemy. He concludes, however, that having her on his side makes her a reliable, if intimidating, ally. The joint team is composed of 3 members from each house: Liselot, Gilbert, and Salim representing House Bergman, and Julieta, Pamela, and Nadia representing House Louisver. A strategic consideration is made. The hero from the capital, Leo, has been training with House Bergman. However, he is not on the princess's team for this match. The conclusion is that the royal family is still gauging his true strength and is content to simply observe his growth for now. Gathered together, the team discusses their plan. Nadia explains that victory is achieved by breaking the glass object at the enemy's base. Her strategy is simple. Salim will handle the defense of their base entirely by himself, while the other 5 launch an all-out offensive. She looks to him for confirmation, asking if he can handle it. He calmly agrees. As the match starts, the opposing team immediately casts disruption magic, filling the field with illusory decoys. Recognizing the tactic, Nadia smirks. "All right, Salim, defense is all yours," she calls out before leading the charge. "All right then, time for us to go on the attack." Before they can advance, an opponent with long, light hair intercepts Gilbert, his sword crashing down. "So, you're from the Bergman team, huh?" The attacker sneers, forcing Gilbert back. "You seriously think a team of first years can stand against us?" From the sidelines, Mark cautions Gilbert to be careful not to get disqualified for causing a serious injury. The opponent continues his taunt, boasting that his team wins the championship every year. In an instant, the entire offensive unit is swarmed by other members of the champion team. As blades clash all around, a stunned Gilbert can only wonder what is happening as their strategy crumbles before it even began. He cursed in frustration, vowing to finish his own fight quickly to get back to the base. His teammates, caught in their own struggles, could only marvel at the defense being mounted behind them, acknowledging that Salim's abilities were on another level. At the base, Salim stood firm, a complex, glowing magical barrier holding back the enemy's advance. The opposing attacker, unable to make any headway, desperately called for backup, shouting that the barrier wasn't budging at all. Suddenly, a powerful blow shattered a section of the magical construct. A dark-haired girl from the champion team appeared with a confident smirk, chiding the upperclassmen for leaving their defenses so wide open and underestimating their first-year opponents. The attacker who had been stalled by the barrier grunted in disbelief, shocked that first years could possess such power, noting that Salim's barrier magic was on a completely different level. The grim reality of their situation began to dawn on Salim's teammates. As the second and third rounds of the tournament conclude with decisive victories, Nadia Louisver leads her team forward with a triumphant laugh. Everything is proceeding smoothly, she declares, as they advance to the semifinals. Watching from the sidelines, Salim Bergman observes the outcome. He quietly confirms to his teammates that the strategy of leaving him in charge of defense appears to be working well. Lieselot Belcher approaches them, remarking with a knowing smile that the semifinals are shaping up to be quite special. As expected of the princess's friends, she notes 3 of the 4 remaining teams are led by first-year students. A new voice cuts in, addressing the first years directly. The speaker announces that they have been watching the match, and now it is time to see who among them is the strongest. The voice belongs to Mark Sarmiento, who approaches Salim with a wide, condescending grin. He mockingly praises Salim as a kind gentleman devoted to charitable activities and skilled in defense, then states how much he is looking forward to facing him in the semifinals. He then loudly declares the beginning of the semifinal match, telling Salim to prepare himself. As Mark's team advances, Salim analyzes their formation, realizing they're using a decoy. He understands their plan. All 5 of them will attack his real body at once. Now positioned behind a shimmering barrier, Salim reflects that while his initial strategy was effective at throwing them off, his opponents have already seen through. With a unified shout, Mark's team unleashes a furious assault on Salim's position. Mark taunts that it is 5 against 1, a force that even Lord Salim cannot possibly withstand. As the attacks hammer against the magical shield, Gilbert Benson shouts from the sidelines, calling Salim a coward and demanding he exit the barrier to fight with swords. Unfazed, Salim retorts that they cannot even break his barrier. He internally reaffirms his confidence, knowing that with his memories of the future, he has an advantage even in a numbers game where physical enhancement is permitted. Mark grits his teeth in pure rage at Salim's taunt. Salim watches him, thinking that Mark is already strong and has no need to keep picking these fights. He muses on the difficulty a noble must face in ignoring someone who has defeated them, a feeling he understands from his own past life. His defensive victory in the semifinals was swift. From the sidelines, Nadia Louisver dismissed the opposing team's attempt to copy Salim's strategy as foolish, thanking them for an easy win. With the noise of that battle fading, she declared it was time to settle things with swords. She and her teammates now faced their final opponents. With a determined look, Nadia announced that the finals were at last upon them, and their entire team stood united, ready to give the match everything they had. Their opponent was none other than Crown Princess Rafaela, who stood poised with her sword at the ready. Salim remarked to Nadia that facing the princess's team was a fitting conclusion. He explained that since their decoy tactics were now known, he would be counting on her for defense. Nadia affirmed her readiness, and with their strategies set, the final match began. The instant the signal was given, Princess Rafaela surged forward, closing the distance in a blur of motion. Her attack was aimed solely at Salim, who met the strike with a shimmering defensive barrier. He was taken aback. The princess was launching a solo assault. This tactic was immediately recognized by the onlookers. Mark Sarmiento noted that while the princess attacked, the rest of her team was dedicated entirely to defense, the complete opposite of the strategy his own team had employed earlier. The match had therefore been distilled into a direct confrontation, a one-on-one battle between the princess's offense and Salim's defense. He recalled that although he had bested her in their last sword duel, she was well aware that his true expertise lay in barrier magic. He watched her closely, a realization dawning. It seemed to him that the princess was enjoying herself. Though her expressions were typically difficult to decipher, he concluded she must be a battle junkie. The thought was intriguing. He had finally found a worthy opponent. Sensing his formidable resistance, Princess Rafaela decided she could no longer hold back. She reasoned that inflicting a serious injury wouldn't lead to disqualification and, with that, committed to giving the fight her all. She unleashed a torrent of raw offensive power that swirled around her. As he braced for the impact, Salim calmly assessed her overall combat ability, acknowledging that at this point in time, the princess was slightly stronger than he was. He internally acknowledged the princess's incredible power, a fact that held true even with the vast experience he had accumulated before his redo. Despite this, he knew his role wasn't to defeat her directly. He would focus entirely on defense, using his experience to erect barriers that countered her attacks while conserving his own magical power. His goal was simply to buy time until Nadia and the others could destroy the opponent's objective. As the duel paused, Princess Rafaela commented that she'd heard rumors of him being weak, only good for helping others, but now saw he was actually quite strong. Salim accepted the compliment with a gentle smile, advising her that people don't follow others based on strength alone and that she should pay more attention to those around her. He warned her that someone might be crying in her shadow, a thought that coincided with his system notification. Being isolated from his classmates was increasing his experience points, raising his current level to 35. The princess was confused by his words, questioning what he was even saying. Salim noted internally that sarcasm didn't seem to work on her, just as Nadia had mentioned. He observed that her immense combat power was completely out of proportion for someone so young. Suddenly, a cheer erupted from his teammates. They had succeeded. The match was won. Princess Rafaela looked on in disbelief as Salim's allies celebrated their victory. Nadia Louisver triumphantly held the winner's trophy aloft. In the crowd, Lieselot Belter remarked to Salim that she had been worried about the alliance with House Louisver, but was glad there was no trouble. Other students noted that defeating the mighty princess so soon after enrollment proved that when nobles join forces, they can stand against the royal family. He agreed there had been no trouble, but added that something rather amusing had occurred. Lieselot, intrigued, leaned in and asked him what he meant. Meanwhile, Nadia was approached by Lady Gelsomina Durante, the daughter of the court chamberlain. Gelsomina commented that while Salim was occupied with the princess during the final match, something else had happened. When Nadia questioned what she meant by "in the middle of a match," Gelsomina laughed it off, insisting it was indeed a match she was referring to. In a sudden, violent motion, Nadia delivered a powerful punch directly to Gelsomina's face, sending her flying backward. An onlooker gasped in shock at the sight. In the aftermath of the confrontation, Lieselot Belter approaches Salim, her face alight with excitement. She declares that witnessing the event was incredibly refreshing and satisfying, expressing her wish that he could have seen it as well. Salim, however, appears visibly uncomfortable with her enthusiasm. He struggles internally, unsure how to respond. While he admits to his own complicated feelings toward Gelsomina after her actions against Laura, he reminds himself to act like a gentleman. He reflects that proper ladies and gentlemen should not even engage in such conversations, leaving him at a loss. As he grapples with his thoughts, Nadia Louisver walks calmly through a corridor, her serene expression causing other students to part ways before her. She approaches Salim, who decides to forego dwelling on the matter and simply praise her directly. He tells her he heard she played a significant role and regrets not seeing it himself. With a polite laugh, Nadia deflects the compliment, stating it was all thanks to Salim's defense and that everything worked out perfectly. She continues, explaining that since the Crown Prince made the effort to come to the academy in the capital, he must now understand how the balance of power truly works. Salim, slightly taken aback, can only agree, remarking on how amazing Nadia is. From a distance, Princess Rafaela watches them, her expression hardening with resolve. Her silent vow is a promise made to herself as she observes Nadia and Salim together. The humiliation she feels will be repaid someday, a regret that will define the strongest princess. Within the academy, a group of young noble women discuss the recent tournament. Pamela Sati enthusiastically praises Salim's barrier magic, marveling at how it even protected the princess. Lieselot Belter listens, admitting that with all the rumors focused on his enchanting and healing magic, she hadn't known what to expect from him in a real battle. She reveals that she was merely gauging his abilities, concluding that her own disruption magic proved unnecessary. She reflects on his identity, Salim Bergman, eldest son of the Duke, who inexplicably learned healing magic just before enrolling. Lieselot continues her report, noting how truly shocking it is for someone to suddenly acquire healing magic, an art so few can wield. More concerning are reports that Salim dislikes the church, actively keeping his distance and healing commoners for free without any official affiliation. She recognizes this as a potential problem. She explains the delicate political situation involving the Louisver family, who reside in the mountains. They installed a loyal bishop to lead the church in their domain, ensuring the church's rigid doctrines do not interfere with their trade with so-called heretics. Any action that provokes the church could destabilize this arrangement and spill over into the Louisver domain. Given the circumstances, Lieselot concludes that they must continue to keep a close eye on Salim's activities. Pamela, however, seems completely charmed, sighing that one can't help but watch him. Her dreamy comment prompts Julieta Genet to ask what she means. Pamela admits that it's strange. She's certain she must have met Lord Bergman in the past, but she has no memory of him. Julieta concurs, finding it hard to believe she would ever forget such a handsome face. Nadia Louisver interjects, asking if they truly don't remember the arrogant noble who was always trying to one-up everyone. She confirms that unpleasant boy was Salim. The revelation stuns Pamela and Julieta, who insist he looks completely different. Nadia acknowledges he always had refined features, but his harsh demeanor worked against him. Pamela agrees, remarking that his current radiance makes his charitable acts believable, calling it a drastic change. She continues dreamily, saying the Salim of today is the kind of person who would rescue a female student from bullies. She recalls how he didn't boast after his tournament victory, instead sincerely praising Nadia's own achievements. Julieta sighs in agreement, admitting he's really something special. Lieselot cuts in, chiding them for being so easily swayed. She warns there's still a chance he's merely putting on an act. Pamela retorts, asking what's wrong with finding him charming. Flustered, Julieta declares they must build up their resistance to handsome men immediately. Her friend's reaction gives Lieselot an idea. She muses that even if Selim is plotting something, she can't imagine what it could be. Therefore, to better understand him, and to build their supposed resistance, she proposes they invite him to a tea party. She reconsiders her initial assessment of Selim Bergman. Having read reports on him, she had assumed he was just another ambitious young lord scheming to win public favor against the church. But after meeting him, her opinion began to shift. His healing magic is a remarkable ability, and his enchanting magic is quietly astounding. Furthermore, he develops magical tools for commoners and releases the blueprints publicly, for free. She now wonders if someone who gives off such a radiant aura could truly be planning something evil, questioning if his intentions might be good after all. Looking out a window, she recalls hearing that Selim engages in charity work even in the royal capital. Wondering if he will be out again this weekend, she resolves to see for herself what he is truly like. Later, Lieselot informs her friends of her plan. While Pamela Sati reports that her aunt is doing well and Julieta Jeanette lament her need to study, Lieselot announces she is going out to investigate Selim's movements. Nadia Louisver expresses a desire to go, but explains she must reply to a letter from her mother. Her friends having decided to join her after all, the group makes their way to a district within the royal capital where the poor live. From a narrow alleyway, Lieselot spots their target in the distance. Nadia takes charge of the surveillance, warning the others that Selim's guard possesses superior sensing abilities. She instructs them to keep their distance while she uses disruption magic to mask her own presence and approach him undetected. Unaware of his observers, Selim begins his work. He raises a hand, and a vast, intricate magic circle expands around him, unleashing a powerful pulse of energy. From her concealed vantage point, Nadia is stunned by the display. She recalls the reports of his famous healing and enchanting magic and his astounding barrier magic from the tournament. Now witnessing his incredible control over earth magic, she concludes his skills are exceptional across the board, as expected of a Duke's heir. She continues to watch as he uses this power to repair the homes of the district's residents, accepting only their words of thanks before moving on to the next house, and then the next. Suddenly, her observation is cut short. Selim appears directly in front of her, having seen straight through her disruption magic. He calmly addresses her by name, remarking on the unexpected sight of the Duke's personal guards sightseeing in the capital's lower districts. With a disarming smile, he offers to show them around, noting that he knows the area well from his many previous visits. Nadia understands he is choosing to treat this as a chance encounter. As her companions agree to follow at a slight distance, she accepts his offer. He suggests that his men's presence might be making his companions uncomfortable, proposing they be given some time alone. As he points out an open-air market just ahead, Nadia Louisver internally questions his motives, wondering if this is a strange form of consideration or if he truly has no ulterior plans. Following his lead, they enter the bustling market, where Selim explains anyone can set up a stall to sell their wares. As they browse, his attention is drawn to a small, carved wooden doll. He approaches the elderly shopkeeper and asks its price, to which the man replies it costs 1 silver coin. Nadia, watching the exchange, finds the doll lovely and decides to purchase it herself. She hands over a coin, thanking the pleased shopkeeper for the transaction. But as she completes the purchase, another woman approaches, pointing out that the coin Nadia provided was copper. She exclaims that the price was a silver coin, which is 10 times the value of what was paid. The shopkeeper confirms the discrepancy with a sneer, stating that for nobles, that's the going rate. He dismissively tells Nadia the matter is too complicated for a little girl to grasp, causing her to tremble with indignation at the blatant scam. Her anger gives way to a different tactic. Nadia calmly examines the doll and compliments the shopkeeper's skill, asking if he carved the piece himself. Surprised by the shift in tone, the man defensively confirms that he did. Before the shopkeeper can react further, Selim intervenes. Holding up a silver coin, he declares it a fair price for such fine craftsmanship, leaving Nadia to realize she must back down. He then turns his attention to the craftsman, observing that his back must be giving him trouble from the heavy work of handling lumber. He then raises a finger to his lips, confiding that he knows a little about healing, and urges the man to continue his wonderful work. A soft glow envelopes the shopkeeper, who cries out in shock as the chronic pain in his back vanishes completely. He stares at Selim, utterly bewildered. As they walk away from the now-stunned craftsman, Nadia confronts Selim directly. She asks if he just used healing magic, and for free, no less. She points out that he did, in fact, receive something from the shopkeeper just a moment ago. He deflects her direct question, explaining that the good-natured, skilled man was so pleased to have his work appreciated that he offered the doll as a bonus. Holding the small figure, Selim turns to Nadia and asks if he might have it, remarking on its fine quality. He presented her with a finely crafted pendant, remarking with a gentle smile that it was beautiful. Nadia, holding the gift, could only agree. Her quiet agreement quickly turned to flustered shock. She stammered, taken aback by the unexpected gift and its undeniable quality. He explained his reasoning, noting how the delicate craftsmanship of the flowers and plants gave the piece a sense of vitality. The natural materials and motifs, he declared, made it a perfect match for her own vibrant beauty. Nadia's cheeks flushed as she recognized his method. It was a clever technique, she realized internally, praising an object in a way that was actually a direct and powerful compliment to the person receiving it. The thought that he was a dangerous man flashed through her mind. Unaware of her inner turmoil, he continued his thoughts aloud. He mused that the shopkeeper was creating wonderful things for the common folk, using simple materials to bring color into their lives. He felt that nobles like them must recognize its true value and not carelessly intrude on such domains. He then smiled brightly, confessing that he'd had a good time. Walking through the city with a girl felt like something a normal student would do, an experience his former self could never have imagined. His innocent remark sent Nadia into another spiral of suspicion, warning herself to be careful, wondering if this too was a calculated move. His smile faltered, replaced by a look of bashful embarrassment. He stammered, admitting that he'd never had the chance to do something like this before and found the situation a bit awkward. His genuine awkwardness struck her with force. She was completely unable to figure him out. Was he naturally this way, or was it all a calculated act? She lamented that this gentle type of man was always the most difficult to handle. To think she was the one who had resolved to build up a resistance to him felt pathetic. As the sun began to set, he suggested they head back. Nadia watched him, her thoughts settling into a new conclusion. This side of Salim didn't seem like someone who would plot anything wicked. After just one day, she was completely convinced that the man he was now wasn't driven by vanity or ulterior motives. In her eyes, he had grown into a saint. Inside the manor, the early summer heat has taken its toll. Salim Bergman tends to a maid who has collapsed from heat stroke, assuring her it's no trouble. He notes that it must be difficult for those who cannot use self-recovery magic and gently advises her to be careful not to overexert herself. The maid apologizes profusely, thanking him for his kindness. To help her, he decides to use one of his abilities. He reflects that in the 2 months since arriving at the royal capital, his level has been steadily rising. A translucent screen materializes before him, prompting him to confirm the use of stamina support. The skill activates, and a cascade of system notifications announces that his daily quests have been completed, resulting in a level up. He has reached level 40. A jolt of excitement runs through him as he realizes he's reached a multiple of 10, wondering what new skill he will receive. The system then declares that he has acquired the regeneration treatment skill, capable of healing any and all physical damage. He is stunned into silence, his eyes wide with disbelief at the sheer power of the ability he has just been granted. His mind races to comprehend the implications. His old healing skill was limited to minor wounds and illnesses, a rare but ultimately minor ability. This new skill, however, is on a completely different level. Sometime later, on a balcony overlooking the grounds, an attendant with dark hair and glasses approaches Salim, also acknowledging Valerie Meldars, who stands nearby. He begins by remarking on the incredible news. The attendant notes that Salim's previous healing magic was already a rare gift, but the ability to heal major injuries that even body reinforcement cannot is astonishing. Salim confirms this gravely, stating that he can now likely heal any injury. He then clarifies the nature of his power, explaining that it is a healing skill automatically performed by the system, not his own magic. He muses that he must be careful with his words, as claiming to use healing magic would be registered as a lie. With this in mind, he gives the attendant a directive. Find him injured people so he can train his new abilities. The attendant readily agrees, promising to make arrangements at once. He declares he must report this development to the Bergman domain immediately and turns to leave, nearly colliding with Lieselot Belcher. He calls out for her to wait. As the urgent exchange unfolds, Valerie, who had remained on the balcony, turns her head with a questioning look as if she has just noticed something amiss in the distance. She watched as Salim's attendant expressed his dismay. Their precious spirit pigeon for regular reports was gone. Seeing the man's distress over an urgent report that needed to be sent to the domain, Valerie offered a solution, presenting a birdcage and suggesting they use one of hers. The attendant was relieved to hear that this was a private spirit pigeon from House Belt, a key part of the ducal house's information network. Assured that the bird would fulfill its duty, he declared he would prepare the report at once and hurried away. As he departed, Valerie laughed, admitting to a curious Salim that she found it amusing to make her sisters wait. She explained that the letter she was attaching was not urgent, but rather a collection of fantastical tales from the capital meant for her younger sisters. With a quick movement, she swapped the letters on the pigeon's leg. Once the letter was secured, the pigeon fluttered from her hand to Salim's, nuzzling against him affectionately. Salim was taken aback by the creature's immediate fondness, reflecting on his past life as a detestable noble whom even animals avoided. He wondered if the very impression he gave to the world was changing. He sent the spirit pigeon on its way. Valerie remarked on how quickly the bird had taken to him, enough to make her, a tamer, feel jealous. Salim found himself smiling. Being liked by animals felt surprisingly good. Later, his attendant returned, having brought an injured man from the domain. The man clutched his arm, looking at Salim with uncertainty and asking if his injury could truly be healed. Salim calmly affirmed, "Yes. Let me see." He placed his hand over the man's wounded arm and announced the treatment would begin. A brilliant light enveloped the injury as a surge of power flowed through him. The major injury was instantly regenerated, granting him 1,000 experience points and causing him to level up to 41. The light faded to reveal a perfectly healed arm. The man stared in disbelief, while the attendant, overcome with emotion, proclaimed that a healer of such caliber was unheard of in the entire country and thanked Salim profusely. His praise continued, his voice filled with awe as he called the feat amazing. He moved in close, his face beaming, startling the visibly drained Salim with his enthusiastic proximity. Later, resting in his bed, Salim sighed with exhaustion. The experience had been rough. He reflected on the power of his new skill. While its performance was on another level, so was its magic consumption. For now, healing one person a day was his absolute limit. He understood the grave danger of his new ability. Once initiated, the regeneration treatment was an unstoppable process that would drain his magic to depletion to fully heal the patient. Using it carelessly could put his own life at risk. To reduce the skill's immense magic cost, he realized it was crucial to increase his proficiency with healing skills, which meant he would need to perform even more treatments than before. Despite his urgency to heal as many people as possible, his attendant advised him to wait. He urged his lord to hold off on seeking new patients for a month until the long-term vacation. The attendant acknowledged how merciful the ability was, but stressed that it was far too powerful. He explained that if word spread about a cure for previously incurable injuries, it would cause widespread panic. For that reason, knowledge of the power must be restricted to a trusted few within the ducal house. He suggested that once summer vacation began, Salim could tour the domain and heal people then. He saw the logic in the attendant's words, but knew he couldn't wait. If things stayed as they were, he would be in trouble when the time came. There was something he absolutely had to accomplish before the summer vacation. The attendant, seeing his lord's insistence, deduced he must have a plan. Salim confirmed this by asking him to bring trustworthy patients who could keep a secret, even just a few at a time, so he could get used to the new ability as soon as possible. His true motive was clear in his mind. He needed to reduce the damage from a future incident that would strike his domain. The responsibility rested in his hands. And so, one day as the summer vacation drew near, Pamela approached him at the academy. Noticing his pale appearance, she asked if something had happened to him. She turned away, her own expression becoming somber. She murmured to herself, it's finally time. Later, she explained to her friends that she was returning to her home, the Sati County, earlier than planned for the vacation. There had been a serious monster outbreak, and her mother was badly injured. She declares with tearful resolve that she will personally lead the charge to subjugate the monster. Nadia, concerned, warns her that it's far too dangerous, pointing out that even Pamela's mother couldn't defeat it. Salim interjects, his arms crossed, stating that if she is so determined to go, she must take reinforcement from House Louisver. He offers to lend her anyone she needs, or even go with her himself. It is clarified that Pamela's mother is the younger sister of Marquis Louisver, making Nadia and Pamela cousins. Nadia explains the difficult situation. While House Sati is heavily influenced by the Louisver Marquisate, their relationship is complicated. She insists that for the sake of her clan and their retainers, she must be the one to slay the monster to prevent their family's independence from being compromised. Despite her adoration for Nadia and the Marquis, she feels she cannot accept their direct aid. The conversation continues, outlining the core duty of a noble holding the rank of count or higher, to single-handedly protect their people from monsters and develop their lands. For House Sati to maintain its independence, they must succeed in subjugating the monster on their own. Salim considers the potential for the worst possible outcome if Pamela insists on upholding her pride against an enemy beyond her strength. A new thought occurs to him. His healing abilities might be useful in helping the Countess recover. He turns to Pamela, suggesting that if borrowing the Louisver family's power is too difficult, she should take him instead. He winks playfully, explaining his plan. Since accepting aid from a ducal house would only complicate matters with House Louisver, he proposes to go in secret, simply to help a friend. He assures her that he's quite good at pretending to be a commoner, so the ducal house of Bergman would have nothing to do with it. Nadia reacts with a thoughtful hum, remarking that Salim has, as always, investigated her activities quite thoroughly. She notes that he seems to know his way around commoner culture and has heard he's still healing the sick in the capital's common districts. She muses that he might actually be able to pull it off, though she teases that with all due respect, he sparkles far too much to ever pass for a commoner. Salim lets out a nervous laugh. Her light-hearted demeanor vanishes as she turns sharply to Pamela, her voice filled with urgency. She reminds her cousin that if anything were to happen to her, House Sati would fall. She implores Pamela to accept Salim's kind offer. Visibly moved, Pamela looks at Salim with gratitude in her eyes. She thanks him and apologizes for dragging him into her family's troubles. He simply tells her to leave it to him. As this unfolds, he recalls a memory from his previous life. In that timeline, Pamela returned to her domain for this very incident and died. The memory of her fate solidifies his resolve. He understands that this problem in Sati County will eventually ripple out and affect House Louisver. To prevent that future from coming to pass, he needs Nadia's strength to confront the demons. Therefore, he must eliminate any threat that could weaken House Louisver, and to do that, he must gather his forces and save Pamela. Interrupting Leo's training, he approached the swordsman with a request. I have a favor to ask, he stated plainly. Leo, surprised by the interruption, simply questioned, "A favor?" The young noble then explained the situation, stating that he was going to a friend's estate to help them hunt a monster. Leo listened, his mind racing with confusion, unable to fathom what the son of a high noble could possibly want with a commoner like himself. Leo, still perplexed, asked why Selim would come to him for such a task. Selim elaborated on the delicate nature of his mission. His friend is a noble, and to protect their family's honor, he must travel in disguise as a commoner. To make the ruse believable, he explained, he needed an actual commoner to accompany him. He looked at Leo with conviction, believing that with the future hero by his side, they would be able to defeat any monster they faced. "I need you to lend me your strength," Selim requested, adding earnestly that he truly wanted to help them. Leo considered the proposal, recalling that Selim was blessed with a special power for a reason. Understanding the situation, he quietly accepted. With his decision made, Leo declared his unwavering loyalty. He was already in the young lord's debt, he affirmed, and would follow wherever he led. The hunt was set to begin. Inside a carriage, Selim briefs his companions, explaining that for this mission, they will be going incognito as commoner students. Nadia, now wearing a different uniform, expresses concern that her apparent age doesn't match the role, but Selim reassures her that it looks good. He looks to his assembled team, Valerie, Leo, and another student, and states that he is counting on all of them. Elsewhere, Nadia Louisver approaches Leo, who is sitting with a young woman named Mina. Nadia mentions hearing from Selim that House Bergman has yet to recruit Leo. She points out that if things continue this way, Leo will have to leave the capital after graduation. Seeing an opportunity, she extends an offer for him to serve House Louisver instead. He replies that he has no intention of leaving the capital and has been turning down provincial offers. Nadia counters, explaining that without social standing, if he rejects invitations, he'll be forced into service with the royal family and sent to a remote territory. She promotes her own house, noting their prosperous trade in the capital and that promotions are based on ability, a better deal than the royal family offers. Despite the compelling argument, Leo remains firm, stating his indebtedness to Lord Selim prevents him from simply serving another noble. Observing his unwavering loyalty, Nadia wonders aloud if Selim has already tamed him, but tells him to keep their offer in mind. Later, as Leo sits with Mina, she asks if Lord Selim is an arrogant noble. Leo denies this, but admits to himself that he cannot allow himself to be tamed by him either, leaving Mina to ponder the meaning of his words. She reacts with shock, asking if he lost to Selim. Leo clarifies that it's never a loss, only a draw, as he feels unable to use his full power against him. Mina is incredulous, knowing Leo's strength, and questions if Selim is truly that powerful. She recalls Leo mentioning that Selim heals the sick and repairs homes for free, calling him saint. Leo looks down, frustrated that he couldn't even scratch such a man. Mina notes how highly he speaks of Selim and asks why he doesn't simply ask to serve him. She quickly adds, however, that she doesn't want to be separated from him. Leo then reveals the source of his debt. When he was dying from monster-related food poisoning, it was Lord Selim who saved him. He laments that his own amazing magic is purely for combat. She suggests that he was blessed with such a special power for an important reason. She believes that by protecting Lord Selim, Leo would in turn help countless people. Leo agrees with her sentiment, but expresses doubt, reasoning that Selim is already incredibly strong and has many retainers, so he isn't needed. Mina advises him to take his time and decide by graduation. The journey concludes after 2 days by carriage. The group arrives at their destination, Sati County, a territory situated to the east of the Louisver domain and north of the royal capital. Upon entering a grand estate, Pamela Sati is greeted by a young man she identifies as Frederick, her half-brother. He immediately questions the identities of her companions. Pamela explains they are friends from the academy, commoners on recommendation for their exceptional magic, here to help unofficially. Frederick scoffs at her explanation, accusing her of merely gathering a group of pretty faces in the capital. His insult provokes Valerie, who bristles and asks how he dares speak to Lord Selim that way. Pamela quickly intervenes, telling Valerie to control herself. Internally, Pamela processes the confrontation, noting that she and Frederick have different mothers, which seems to explain the tension. The history of the Sati family is a troubled one. Count Sati's abilities were merely adequate, but he managed to maintain his domain with the support of his first wife, his retired parents, and his clan. 17 years ago, however, tragedy struck during a great monster outbreak, and he lost both his wife and parents, leaving him to grieve alone with his young son. Following this loss, Count Sati lacked the ability to maintain his domain on his own. It was then that House Louisver offered him a lifeline. Pamela's grandfather, the Marquis Louisver of that time, gave his own daughter to the Count as a second wife. The Marquis's intentions were hardly subtle. For a house of his rank, to give a daughter to a mere Count was practically unheard of. His ambition to gain influence over the adjacent territory was clear. This political union resulted in Pamela's birth. However, the title of Marquis Louisver was later passed down to Nadia's mother, and with the change in leadership, their ambition towards House Sati waned. The fact remains that Pamela is now the heir to House Sati, which has created a deeply strained relationship between her and Frederick, the son of the first wife. In the present, the weary Count Sati greets his daughter, his face etched with exhaustion. "Pamela," he says, his voice heavy, "I'm glad you've returned." She immediately asks about her mother. As she does, Selim observes the Count, noting how old and gloomy he appears for a man said to be only 50. The Count explains that the Countess is in her chambers and that he needs Selim's group to head out for a subjugation mission the next day. Nadia nods in understanding, agreeing that they cannot allow the people to suffer. They are led to the Countess's bedside, where a maid explains the situation. The Countess was struck on the head, but there are no external injuries. The maid continues her explanation, noting that her ladyship's magic is quite potent, so any visible wounds have already healed on their own. Despite this, she has yet to awaken. Selim processes this, recognizing the affliction. It is a troublesome condition that sometimes occurs in those with high levels of magic. Their own power is strong enough to sustain their life, but cannot heal damage to the brain. He feels a slight wave of dizziness as he considers the implications. He internally assesses his own reserves. He had used a bit of magic to assist with their travel, but he still has over 80% of his power left. A worrying thought crosses his mind. Does this mean that healing the Countess will require nearly all of his magic? He decides against a full, immediate treatment, recognizing the upcoming monster subjugation mission as a pressing problem. Instead, he will use a stamina support spell. He reassures Pamela that while this will delay her mother's recovery, her high level of magic should allow her to hold on. The following morning, the subjugation party assembles. Pamela announces their departure, leading the group north into the forest. The force is led by Count Sati, Pamela, and Frederick, accompanied by 20 knights from House Sati. Selim and his companions follow behind them. As they travel, they learn the reason for the mission. Monsters had destroyed a small village near the northern fort and were now rampaging. The sight that greets them is one of utter devastation, as the villages along their path have been razed to the ground, leaving the party in stunned silence. The devastation is too much for Pamela, who covers her face in anguish. Selim, however, remains composed, his expression hardening as he surveys the grim scene. His companion with glasses approaches, confirming the grim reality. It's no use. The villagers have all been devoured by monsters, completely wiped out. He reports the situation is the same on his side of the village. Selim notes a strange discrepancy. Despite the massacre, the buildings themselves are still standing. He continues his assessment, observing the gruesome state of the corpses. In stark contrast, he realizes the ransacking of the buildings seems far too methodical and orderly for a chaotic monster attack. As Nadia calls his name, his attention is drawn to a definitive clue. Clean slash marks on a wall, the unmistakable sign of a sword. Nadia, examining the bodies, confirms his suspicion, stating that the wounds on the villagers were not caused by monsters. Selim adds a crucial piece of evidence. His detection magic never registered a single monster on their entire journey, which could only mean one thing. She looks at him, her expression grim. Drawing from her extensive experience traveling the land as a swordswoman, she states her conclusion with certainty. This was not a monster attack, but a massacre carried out by other humans. The truth settles in with chilling finality. They have been unwittingly drawn into the violent internal conflicts of House Sati. He considered the grim reality of the situation. Given the feud between Pamela and Frederick, the tense atmosphere surrounding Count Sati, and the circumstances between House Sati and House Louisver, a violent family dispute was not surprising. He had initially dismissed the possibility, believing that killing the Countess and Pamela would render the domain unmanageable, especially since the current Count and Frederick were unreliable in combat. But a chilling alternative now presented itself. What if the Count had grown desperate? The horrifying thought solidified. In his current state, the Count might not care about his domain or the continuation of his house. He might even be trying to eliminate his own wife and daughter. Meanwhile, Pamela stared in shock at one of the bodies. She pointed out the deep slash marks, exclaiming that there was no way a monster could have made such a wound. Her half-brother, Frederick, suddenly appeared, questioning her discovery. He confirmed they found a body not devoured by beasts, the daughter of someone from House Louisver. Pamela, stunned, asked what he meant. Frederick coldly explained they had taken care of her bothersome mother so she would never wake up, all to eliminate Louisver's interference. He then added that while they couldn't kill her mother, Pamela herself was a different matter. He drew his weapon, flanked by his father and their soldiers, and declared that Pamela would die here. Pamela could only whisper in disbelief, questioning if even her own father was part of this. Her father, Count Sati, pointed a finger at her, his face a mask of cold resolve. He commanded Frederick to prove himself as the heir by cutting Pamela down. She recoiled in horror, unable to accept the reality of the situation. As she cried out in denial, a voice called out, telling her to calm down and that her allies were right there. In a flash of movement, Selim's group sprang into action. Leo and Nadia moved to restrain the Count and the Knight Captain, while Selim declared he would immobilize the rest with a barrier. He then turned to Pamela, urging her to draw her sword and settle the matter of succession with her brother once and for all. Frederick grunted, sneering that if there is discontent, nobles will not hesitate to kill each other. Spurred on, Pamela raised her sword with a powerful cry, accepting that the successor is decided by strength. She watches her half-brother fall, defeated. The matter of the heir decided in a one-on-one duel. This, she realizes, is the brutal aesthetic of nobility. As she grapples with this reality, Selim stands over the fallen Frederick, noting that the difference in their strength was obvious. He remarks that Frederick is still a noble, and though unconscious, he should be able to heal on his own. His attention then turns to the men still trapped within his barrier. He asks Pamela how they should be dealt with, and she replies that they will not be killed. She explains that House Sati cannot afford to kill precious magic users. It is more profitable to sell them to another noble house. Selim acknowledges her pragmatic decision. With that decision made, Pamela's resolve hardens. She declares the matter settled and states her intention to restrain everyone and return to the city, where she will have her father retire. She tells the others to head back, and they agree. She offers her sincere thanks to everyone for their help. Meanwhile, Selim, having found some rope for binding the captives, prepares to channel magic into the restraints. But as he begins, a sudden, violent shattering sound rips through the air. Selim looks up in shock, realizing his barrier has been broken from the inside. The source of the destruction becomes horrifyingly clear. Standing amidst the bloody remains of the men he was meant to command, Count Sati now exudes a palpable, dark aura. His eyes, once human, are now voids of pure darkness, devoid of any light or reason. Seeing this transformation, Selim understands the terrible truth. He identifies the phenomenon as demonification, explaining that the Count has been consumed by darkness. Pamela stares in disbelief, whispering her father's name. Selim recognizes this as the worst possible outcome.